Good morning and welcome, everyone. I will call the meeting to order. Let's start with a round of introductions. I'm Nancy Wise, Commissioner.
Pat Malone, Commissioner.
Jesse Ott, interim NAEP director.
Rick Krieger, Assistant County Administrator.
Rachel McInerney, County Administrator.
And joining us online,
Maura Kwiatkowski, Board of Commissioners staff.
Shannon Bush, Community Development.
James Wright, Community Development.
I see joining us as well virtually is Commissioner Ojero. And with that, we'll move on to review and approve the agenda. Are there any changes to the agenda? Seeing, hearing none. Let's move on right through. Topic 3.1, discussion regarding a resolution to establish the enterprise zone school support fee rate. And with us, we have Christopher Jacobs with the Corvallis Benton Economic Development Office. Welcome, Christopher.
Good to be with you. My first time at a work session, so it's a little bit different engaging around the table. I kind of like it. I have some information to provide, and I appreciate you taking time to hear about this. This is really triggered by new state legislation requiring something called an enterprise zone school support rate. And so that can range between 15 and 30%. There hasn't been a lot of news on this, which is interesting. I think that there could be a lot more reporting in the coming weeks and months. There has been guidance by OEDA and by the League of Oregon Cities. But if you just Google this, you can't find a whole lot of information. You really got to dive into the ORS to try and understand what this is aimed at doing. And I'm here to kind of explain what that means for us. Corvallis School District 509J reached out to me and said that they would like to pass this resolution consistent with the new legislation and establish the fee at the minimum 15%. After September 23rd, if we do not have a resolution establishing a fee rate, we can no longer provide tax exemptions in the years 4 and 5, which are pretty critical for the businesses receiving those exemptions. Enterprise zones are one of the few economic development tools offered by the state of Oregon for local governments to utilize. And they're used to incentivize new business investments by abating all local property tax assessed associated with an expansion or new construction for a fixed number of years. And so we've currently got 2 enterprise zone tax exemptions that have been approved. Those are both for 5 years. They wouldn't be affected by this, but any new tax exemptions offered through the enterprise zone would be. And so it's a fee paid directly by the business in year 4 and in year 5. So if we were to pass the resolution, 15% of the total tax exemption would be paid by the business to the local school district. And so that's how this is intended to work. I will say that the guidance that we've received indicates that it's possible school support fees will not increase local district budgets. This is a question I imagine you might have, as fees must be included as local revenue in school funding formula calculations. And in most cases will be offset by reduced state school fund distributions. So it's really, I think, a question of shifting the burden and responsibility for how schools are funded. And I think the primary benefactor is frankly the state.
Yep, that's what it sounds like.
So the school would more than likely financially wouldn't make any difference. It's where the money comes from, and so the money some money would be coming locally that the state would have had to provide.
Correct. And so I'm grateful that 509J chose the minimum 15% rate. I think that really does help protect the businesses that need the tax exemptions in order for us to grow our long-term tax base. If it were 30%, I think that there would be an opportunity to maybe negotiate. And in the case of Philomath School District, where we still have to settle this matter for the Philomath Enterprise Zone, for which the EDO is the zone sponsor, this is something we still have to sort out. And so I'm going to be reaching out to them to try and figure out where they fall on this establishing the rate question. And we'll probably have to do this one more time.
So Philomath is the only other Benton County school district that would be affected.
Where we have enterprise zones, yes.
So, and this was new legislation, so this just became available in 2023 as the option, is that correct?
HB 2009 was passed in 2023 and became part of ORS 285C 0.067. And so, yeah, that's kind of the timeline here is late 2023, and then it finally took effect in 2024. That's when guidance started coming out to the school districts.
Has LOC been much help as far as guidance and what local districts should be doing?
League of Oregon Cities provided the context that I shared with you about how school district budgets might be affected. They worked with OEDA to put out a guidance statement about how that would work. But none directly to schools as to recommending one percentage versus another that I've been able to.
Could you repeat what the date is that it needs to be effective?
It's September 23rd.
Okay, so coming up. Okay, so we will need to do this again by September 23rd for Philomath.
Or they won't be able to have a tax exemption under the enterprise zone.
4 and 5, okay. Which, I mean, that should be an incentive to school districts, I think, to have good jobs that pay family wages, especially with their forecast of declining enrollment, so. Okay,
So we have one board meeting before the 23rd.
We have it on next week's agenda for you. We just wanted to prep this for you since it was something new and different.
I just want to check with Commissioner Ojero online if she has any questions or comments to add.
Thank you, Commissioner Wise. No, I don't have any questions at this time.
All right.
So the draft resolution, we will take that up next week.
And that will be, are we hoping to add Philomath to that resolution? Or,
If we can negotiate a rate that is acceptable, I think it would be great to have that ready as well.
Okay.
I'm working with Chris Workman, the city manager, there as well, to make contact and work through that question.
okay, well, sounds good. I'm amenable to that.
Thank you, Chris.
You should have come to the chili feed Sunday. You could have done business.
I know. That's where it really happens.
It does.
No worries. Thank you all.
Thank you. All right, let's move right along to item 3.2, the Fairground Strategic Plan Update with Jesse Ott.
Hi, Commissioners. All right, so we're here to review the Fairgrounds Master Plan. Kind of a reminder on some of this stuff, and for some folks, it might be kind of new what's in here. So we wanted to go over some of the projects that we've already completed, what's outstanding, and just kind of give you an update, and then maybe looking for input on, kind of preferences on where to go from here, and, whatever you folks can recommend. We have a upcoming, we think in October, a Fair Board planning retreat. So it's really nice to be able to talk with the board today, kind of set the stage for that so that we we all get a chance to talk about it and be ready for what's next. So first, we'll just take a review of our preferred layout map. So this is what was developed for the master plan, and some of these projects have been completed, some are still in the works. So one of the ones, actually, our fair manager would be here with me today to discuss this, but we have a tour with Business Oregon to go take pictures and kind of celebrate the grant we were awarded that helped us build number 9 on the map there. That's our new storage building. Looks very similar to number 17, our other storage building, and the purpose of that building was to open up the 4-H barn. I'm having a hard time seeing it on the map there. Oh, there it is, number 8. So what we were able to do, the goal was to take the funding of $222,000 and be able to leverage that to build the new storage building and upgrade the barn. And unfortunately, market changes, we weren't able to get a storage building built for that, so they were willing to adjust. And so we put almost all of it into the storage building, and now we've got a little bit left over to start working on things like the roof of the 4-H barn. What that building is, if you've been to the county fair, it's got some open class stuff in it, pretty basic, but it's a pretty old barn with a big old 4-H clover on the side of it. And during the master plan study, we looked at that as a potential rental facility, barn dances, banquets, that kind of thing. But at this point, it's still just a barn, so we've still got a ways to go there. And so when you're looking at the map, it looks similar to our current footprint, except number 3 has the expansions with breakout rooms. So that's turning the dirt floor arena into an exhibit hall with breakout rooms and new restroom facilities, atrium, that type of thing.
HVAC.
HVAC is the major, yes. Yeah, we nearly have no ventilation in that building as it is right now. And so that's always been identified as a major need. So, and number 14 there, that was originally proposed as OSU Extension has expressed interest to be housed on the same facility as the fairgrounds. We have a lot of synergy there. We have the Master Gardeners program is located there. 4-H does most of their events at our facility. And so they thought that would be a really good synergy. At one point, we had considered putting Brian's EOC over there, but that moved over to the county courthouse facility. And so current kind of thinking when we talk to 4-H is considering that number 16, the field behind the fairgrounds, that property. If we were able to acquire that, we could potentially look into housing the OSU Extension there with us. Which would, just be a really great partnership. We're already partners, and we're the, kind of center of agricultural activities in Benton County, and so it'd be great to have them there with us, same facility if we could.
Well, and isn't that fairly common in other counties
It is.
to have the extension at the fairgrounds?
It is. I think when I talk to most 4-H leads and managers, that's really what they prefer. It's there's just so much collaboration there. That's what they would love to see. And one of the major features is kind of the grand entryway there. One of the things with our fairgrounds is we don't necessarily have a clear flow. I think a lot of the buildings have been kind of built periodically over time without kind of a real kind of grand entryway to make it special, something that looks a lot nicer than chain link and our old ticket booths and that kind of stuff. So.
And the other advantage to that, I think part of the master plan is to the right, no animals.
Yes.
To the left would be the area for animals. It seems like every year that gets more important to cleanliness and not spreading diseases to be better organized. The other thing I was gonna say on 14 and where that was plopped down was, there's space there. That wasn't designed, or it was, so you have a parking lot, and I like the idea of if we can get additional space to think about the extension towards the back instead of, that's a fairly precious corner.
You're right about that. Yeah. So, we service the OSU trail across 53rd Street. We also service the parking for the Midge Kramer path that comes through up through Bald Hill on the other side of our parking lot there over by number 23. And so it not only serves the fairgrounds, but we also just serve the community at large to get onto trails that connect to the larger trail system with the city of Corvallis, NAPE, and Crestmont Land Trust there as well. So that parking lot is really important, and that space in number 14, I agree. That's pretty valuable space. So that's right over there by the marquee. Just an update, the company has ordered our new kind of guts of the marquee sign, and we should be installing it here in the next month or so. So that'll be up and running, which is important. It's one of the only signs like that in Benton County. And so it's great for sponsors of the fair to message for changes in fire conditions and any kind of other messaging we need to do.
Sorry, go ahead.
Same size as.
Same size. We're keeping the same frame and everything. We just replaced the interior. So it'll be a clearer picture, more capabilities, but the kind of cute fairgrounds thing will still be there.
That was a newer sign, correct? Or,
It's about 11 years old.
okay, so do we just have to pay for that completely, or did the company give us a break, or?
That stuff became obsolete, apparently. That was our challenge. Yeah, we found out that it started failing on us, and we connected with IT to help us kind of navigate the system. And basically the stuff had become obsolete, and we couldn't even buy replacement parts anymore. So, and we were not able to get any kind of refund. We had gone past any kind of period like that.
Okay.
So that was a big part of our RFP, was to find something that we could feel like would be longer lasting as well. So
Fingers crossed.
yes, I agree. Comes to that technology stuff. So we can run through some of the completed projects. So we've got the carriage house. So we've done that project. So that was a 1880s era horse boarding facility that the Sheriff's Mounted Posse helped get to the fairgrounds. We converted that to our office. So most of our staff is housed there. We've got offices over at the Avery building as well. That building isn't quite big enough to house our whole team. So that's kind of a future goal of mine eventually, is to be able to bring our whole team into one facility if we can swing it. The pony barn, so those used to have doors on the front. It was kind of like a sliding, if you imagine going to a horse boarding facility, and folks would drop their horses off to be boarded there at the fairgrounds. And over the years, they just saw a lot of declining equestrian use in Benton County. And we converted that to RV storage. So I think it's about 10 months out of the year, you're able to park your RV there for a really good rate. So we park RVs in that space right now, and that's been doing really well for us in revenue. But you do have to get your vehicles out of there for the fair. We enclosed the solar building, so that's made that building a lot more appealing to events. We have the library book sale, ski swap, all kinds of different really beloved events. The annual plant sale from Soil and Water Conservation District. In that building, it's also our beef barn, and that's been a very popular building. We just had a generous donor install some giant fans in there, which help the circulation. It's much more pleasant. So solar building's looking good. If you look out in front of there, one of the projects on the master plan is to put a restroom facility. And so through permitting, it looks a little bit challenging to have one kind of connected, but it could be a kind of a freestanding park style restroom there. Currently, we use ADA portable restroom, and that's not ideal. If we had a restroom there, it would be a lot more appealing for a lot of other events as well. Commercial kitchen. So we finished the commercial kitchen and we've been on the track to try to get it more utilized. So we're still working on that, but we are seeing interest. We've met with a lot of different groups, City of Corvallis, LBCC. We tried applying for a couple grants. So we're still trying to, maximize the use of that building or that commercial kitchen. But we are seeing an increase this year of about 20% use. And we have aspirations to go a lot more than that. New storage building. So I failed to throw the new storage building picture in there. I looked at it and it looks very similar, but that's the old building. So there's another building that looks very similar right behind it. Benton Barn upgrades, we're starting that now. The auditorium closet. So that was a big deal. We used to have to take all of the tables and chairs that would go into the auditorium out into the elements, store them in a different facility, and kind of drive them around the fairgrounds with a forklift. And we just made them dirty, dusty, that kind of thing. Not great for banquets and that type of thing. So that auditorium closet is finished, and we can attest from that project that is probably the most secure place in Benton County for an earthquake, because we really had to reinforce that for code. So now we get into the bigger items. So, this plan, was developed about 5 years ago in 2019. So it's not that old, but conditions have changed. And obviously prices have raised a lot in that time period. So we're looking at that. When we went back to LRS Architects to do an estimate, it really can range, depending on the features you put in the building, between that about $11 million number to convert the arena to a concrete floor, modern HVAC, lighting, some breakout rooms, and improved restroom facilities. And that can range anywhere from about 11 million to about 17 million from what we can get. And then R is our outdoor arena. So that's what we use during the fair for the all-girls rodeo and NRPA rodeo. And, the facility, it's well liked, but it's outside. It has drainage issues, and most of the year it's not usable when folks would love to ride. So the plan there was to put a kind of open-sided cover over the top so that we could have year-round equestrian use.
But part of that plan was fundraising by the some of the potential users, and heard that discussion early on, and haven't heard a lot of talk about fundraising.
That's been hard. And in the master plan, kind of referencing the master plan. So, when we did this in 2019, the kind of basis of the plan was that the master plan shall be based on maximizing the property use and value to Benton County residents and visitors, taking into consideration economic viability, livability in the region, including historic, cultural, recreational, and economic value. And so they did a fairly robust economic feasibility study in the master plan itself. And we did find on that plan that there's a couple large horse centers around us in Lynn County, and one, the Oregon Horse Centers down in Lane County. And so the size, the quality, the pricing, and the access of those two horse show centers, they really felt like it would be very difficult for Benton County Fairgrounds to compete for equestrian type things. And so, we still have a very dedicated and passionate equestrian community in Benton County that would love something closer. But they did say it was going to be challenging for us to compete for large horse shows that travel the region. They would more likely go to Lynn County Expo Center or Oregon Horse Center unless we had a design that was even more robust than that.
Earlier you were saying, I don't know if you're talking about 4-H, but declining usage.
Yeah, the 4-H, the 4-H horse community is shrinking. That shrunk, and so we still get a lot of inquiries, but it's been challenging to keep up kind of what the equestrian community would like to see and what we need for our facilities to keep them upgraded.
You mentioned the drainage challenges with the outdoor. Is there any kind of cost estimate what it would take to improve the drainage, which I assume means more months of
Yeah.
usage?
We do have some, estimates that are fairly reasonable, 20,000 or less to improve just tile drainage and that type of thing. But some of the challenges that we have is that, July 15th through August 15th, we have to close most of the facilities at the fairgrounds to prep for the county fair and get everything set up for that. And so even the improved drainage allows for a little bit more spring ride, but everywhere from basically October to, June, it would still be a mud pit without a roof. Is the biggest challenge there. And so we looked at those, we also did a robust study for the exhibition hall, and they found that the concert venues, exhibition hall, all that type of thing, trade shows in Lane County, the facilities that they have in Eugene weren't necessarily competing with our facility that much. It was more Lynn County up there at the Lynn County Expo Center. So, and they're just up the road. So, they kind of have the market on the equestrian events in a lot of cases. But they did find that we would be very competitive for smaller concert venue type facilities in the converted exhibit hall, some more smaller kind of conferences and that type of thing.
Jesse, would you, it's page 73 of the packet. It's a quadrant showing demand and finances. There's 73 of the packet, or 49, page 49 of the market study.
Oh, yes. So those signs, the way that they.
Can we get that on the screen?
Yeah. That's page 49, Erica, on the thing I sent you.
Or 73 of the packet. I remember the initial discussion, well, if you want to make money, just have RV storage.
Yes.
So I kind of understand that thought. Maybe when it comes up, I'll talk a little bit about what where a new exhibit hall would fit in, or and equestrian events.
There we go. So if you go one more back. Okay. Yeah, just one more. Thank you. So there we go. So what this is showing, so on that little quadrant there, it's kind of hard to see if you're looking on the screen there, but in the top right corner of the screen, it kind of shows where our ability to compete and the demand kind of intersect and where we would be most successful. And so our VE activities jump to the top of the list. Fairs and festivals are way up there. We do really well for banquets and reception, especially in Corvallis. There's not a lot of large facilities here. The Alumni Center at OSU, a lot of times prices folks out. And so we kind of hit a really good niche right there.
Is that the auditorium currently?
That is currently the auditorium, yeah.
And would the exhibit hall fit in that same dot?
Yep, it does. And so they referenced that this, would work really well for the exhibit hall as well. And especially for the community events, the trade shows, animal shows, we do pretty well on meetings. But where we found it a little bit tough to compete and the support and the demand was a little low was conferences and horse shows. And so, I think we'd love to get those conferences, but from what I can gather from these studies, when I look at some of the comparables in the region, we're just a little too far away from any kind of economic activity. We're not close to the hotel. You would have to have your group stay somewhere else, get a shuttle out to us, that type of thing. But really great for trade shows, community events, concerts, that type of thing.
Is that horizontal line just arbitrary, or is that break even, or?
I think I think that's kind of the break-even point. Yeah. Yep, and so, Erica, if you would go to the next. I don't know if we have. Yes, that next page, thank you so much. So that one shows a little bit more of the events by financial return. And so again, it kind of shows that conferences, meetings, horse shows, it's tough for us to charge enough to make any kind of profit there to keep some cost recovery and keep our facilities upgraded. Do really well on RV activities, fairs, festivals, banquets and receptions, consumer shows, and spectator events. So we could go back to the PowerPoint really quick.
And I appreciate you going through that, and this was based on the 2019 study.
That's right. And so obviously some things happened during that period, and financially a lot of things are different. And even the event business is a little bit different now. Costs have really skyrocketed. But we do find that that facility is very attractive. It's not so much that the facility is very attractive, there's just not that many places to put on a concert in Benton County. And so we do find that a lot of concert promoters would love to have something that isn't a dirt floor to produce the concerts on. So.
Or 100 degrees.
Yes, or 100 degrees.
Or 40.
So we do have some additional projects as a part of this. So livestock pavilion. So that would be if you came in off of that back Brandes field when you enter the fairgrounds. Like Commissioner Milan said, that would kind of be the center of animal activities during fair. It would also be additional RV storage for us, which is very much needed and very popular. We always send everybody out before the fair so that we can conduct the county fair. But when we reopen it and look for rentals there, it sells out every year and pretty quick. And I think at this point in September, starting the rentals on August 15th, we're already sold out for this year as far as RV storage space. So it is popular.
That may change with the facility in Philomath, East Philomath. I don't know what their timetable is, but they're getting closer to have the mini storage and large facility, and they have more acres there. I think that's still the plan, is RV storage.
And that's something that was not, that facility was not in the works as far as we knew about in 2019. And so that is something to bring up because it does affect our master plan a little bit because that's 175 RV space facility. That's kind of a more of a I don't know what you call it, bougie kind of boutique place where they have more amenities. If you imagine those RV parks that's got a air-conditioned facility to hang out in and a pond and all this stuff and storage facilities. And so from what we can tell, that project's been moving really slow. So we don't know exactly when that timeline. I haven't heard anything in a while, but that does affect things a bit for us. We would hope to still be competitive. We do really well on OSU game days. If you ever go through there, it's packed. The whole place is packed for tailgating, and it's a really great atmosphere. And on those weekends, we clear, a little over $20,000 each time. So we would hope to, still be competitive, but that will change things a little bit for us.
Was the first home game a week ago? No change from.
It was packed.
past year.
It was packed. We've got one coming up this Friday, and so that's so busy that we kind of send everybody down into the lobby to help assist and make sure everyone gets parked in right. And so this coming Friday, we typically do a little potluck at the fairgrounds and just hunker down and try to get everybody set up for the weekend. So the whole expand the auditorium to the east, that was a potential thought, kind of moving into the parking lot a little bit. That plan hasn't really been sussed out that much. It was just another proposal because we do really love our auditorium facility. We talked about the OSU Extension Building being located there and the land acquisition, which is still very important to us. That field behind the fairgrounds is really essential. If that were to be sold or developed, that would really change the makeup of the county fair a great deal. I don't know exactly how we would be able to get so many people to show up. We'd have to figure out some kind of shuttle system.
Because the actual fairgrounds, I think, is 29 acres. And it's pretty packed.
That's right.
And so that land acquisition to the west is, well, like you say, we couldn't do the fair without the parking.
It's really essential. And I think, I guess in our mind, if there was a project that we could knock off of this master plan list, that would be the first one, because it seems to be the most essential component. One more thing that we've been talking a lot about lately and going through the numbers of the stage that we rent every year for the county fair. We've been talking to some folks about the potential of what happens if we bought a stage or put a permanent stage. And I didn't really see anything in the master plan, and I don't know if there was any conversation about that in the past, but
No,
yeah.
not since I've been here.
And so especially, in the costs that we incur, we feel like we might be better off to just purchase our own or build our own. We do it in the same spot every year. That grass field gets very wet in the winter time. So, it might not be realistic to think that we could have a big event out there, utilize the stage in the middle of winter or something, but it might be financially a better situation for us if we ended up adding a stage to this list of master plan projects.
Well, it seems like you could look into different options, like an amphitheater style, maybe
Yes.
paving. That's probably more expensive, but
And really there's Bruce Starker Arts Park that has the amphitheater. OSU has some facilities. You can kind of use the white side for some of this type of stuff, but we have found that a lot of concert promoters would love to be at the Benton County Fair and bring, name acts to Benton County that typically go down to Eugene. And so they've told us that the concert market, surprisingly, everybody goes down to Eugene from Benton County, to go to concerts. And so they love the parking and everything that we have available. So,
Are you far enough along to have any idea of the cost?
for that, it can range anywhere from a couple $100,000 for a mobile unit that's very similar to what we have for the county fair, to a brick and mortar structure. That would be higher price, but we're not that far along yet. I think this kind of came out when we started anticipating what the increases in prices would look like for next year's fair. And then it started to kind of dawn on us that it might be time to make a change there and get our own stage.
Jesse, could you just speak to the OSU Extension Building? Is that 4-H? What is that used for year round?
So Sunset, yeah. So like all the stuff going on at Sunset Building would largely, that's what their kind of dream would be, to have their own facility located with us at the fairgrounds. And so, that goes into everything from the extension does, Willamette Valley tourism to 4-H, Master Gardeners. There's a whole myriad of programs that I'm probably not even aware of that they're involved in.
So that's a project to be completed for them to be able to move out of the Sunset Building.
Yes.
Thank you.
Yeah.
And they have a modest amount of money set aside. I mean, it's kind of on their master plan. But they might have 10% of the actual cost. So they would like to. And it would really help if we had the space where the parking is to the west, so we have a little more flexibility for siting the building and parking and sort of thing.
And we've been very conservative. We had to make some expenditures this year with the sign and a couple other issues we had with our bleachers on the TLT account. But we've been conservative with that because of some of our needs there for that acquisition, if that opportunity arises. So this is the important stuff, coming to funding considerations. So, when we did this plan, and I don't think things have changed that much. We've been unsuccessful in legislative sessions the last couple of years. Rick might be able to speak to it more, but they've made it pretty clear that it's still possible, but it's not one of those ones that's going to just suddenly happen. With all the other needs in the state, that one might be a little challenging. Full state funding for that. So
For the exhibit hall.
for the exhibit, especially the big ticket items. Some of the smaller stuff, we do have options. So strategically combining and dedicating an assortment of current county funding that may be eligible to provide gap funding, TLT, capital improvement, Benton Opportunity Funds, ARPA interest earnings. I don't know if that still applies. Local assistance and Tribal Consistency Fund and land sale revenue. So, it seems like, our TLT is probably, our easiest access right now. Some aggressive opportunities there where we can pursue lottery-backed bond. We could do a dedicated general fund appropriation. Business Oregon. So Business Oregon has been a great partner out there. And that's the only reason Jennifer's not here today, because we want to roll out the red carpet for them when they come through. They've been so helpful. We actually just received a $94,000 assistance grant from Business Oregon that goes to the fairgrounds. And so, we really hope to continue working with them because they're very keen on the fairgrounds. They see it as an economic driver. They've seen our master plan. They know that, with some of these, some of their projections, where if we were able to turn this into exhibit hall and get some of this master plan completed, the jobs and the revenue we would bring to Benton County is something they're really interested in. So,
Now, do we actually have a red carpet?
I don't know if we have a red carpet.
Add that to the list. I'm just saying.
Crumbling gravel path, but we should get a red carpet. But yeah, we're out there. I think they're out there doing some promotional photographs right now. So
Awesome.
They've been great partners. So later this month, I'll be attending a Business Oregon economic meeting. It's a 2-day event where they partner you with public-private partnerships, and they try to help make those connections. And so we'll be there to talk about the historic courthouse and the fairgrounds, as see if anybody would be interested in doing a public-private type partnership, if there's any other agencies that we might be able to pursue for funding.
Jesse, quick question. The $94,000 grant, was that something that your department actually filled out a grant application, or did Business Oregon just say, here's
We
$94,000?
filled out a grant application. It was a kind of a challenging process to get through. It started out at $61,000 for every county. And this was going to be for COVID loss support because we canceled county fair for a couple of years. And a lot of counties couldn't get through the process. And so the fund got larger, and so we got a bigger chunk. So it wasn't like we won some grand award, but they're just very supportive of our
I just think it's just another example how all of our departments are really laser focused on getting outside grant funding
Yes,
to make things happen here.
yes.
So,
Yep, I agree. And, one thing I would add to this, so even last night, I was at the auction committee meeting. So that's our big meeting where we talk about the Lions Club Lee Allen Memorial Auction. Did over $1 million again, easily the largest single day fundraiser in Benton County. And so, we had this meeting, and one thing I really appreciate about the fairgrounds is, the community that utilizes it is willing to support, with funding as well. And so even at that meeting, they have all kinds of plans for kind of smaller elements that can easily be incorporated into this master plan that they would like to fund. So we've been very lucky between them, the Benton County Fair Foundation, which is dedicated to support Benton County fairgrounds facilities. We do have some partners there, so they're a 501c3, both groups run through the Lions Club and the Benton County Fair Foundation, which is just specific to the fairgrounds. And so we've been looking at all kinds of stuff. We've been looking at, our board chair and I wanted to reach out to Rick to talk about some FEMA grants that we may not go for. That one might be a little bit out of our grasp, but we've been diligently pursuing some other grants to at least chip away at this. And so now I would just open it up to further questions and any other kind of strategies, because I think where we're at right now is to take little bites, take little bites. And I think the biggest decision we will have to make is when we put that concrete floor in that exhibit hall. And that really, all the little ones, we could improve HVAC, we can improve lighting, we can improve surfacing entryways, we can add on to these buildings. We can do a lot of stuff with what we have available and the support that we have. But once we do that project, that's kind of no turning back. And so that essentially eliminates winter riding for a lot of our equestrian community. Because at that same time, it's unlikely we would have already put a roof over the outdoor arena. And so, but everything else on there, we really feel like we can keep furthering this master plan and keep it going. I think it's still valid. I think there could be some changes that came in the market through this, and we have regular meetings with Visit Corvallis and some other folks that can kind of help advise on the current, economic outlook for us. But that's really the big picture. So, once we make that choice to invest in that concrete floor, then we're committed, and it's an exhibit hall.
Thank you. Commissioner Oger, I see your hand is up.
Thank you. Jesse, it seems to me that there are several ways to kind of slice and dice some of the decision making. What's going to be economically the most beneficial project to undertake, and what will get us further, or what will get us furthest towards the vision for the master plan? It's another way to look at it in terms of putting first dollars in. So I'm kind of noodling around about how you would think about prioritization. I hear you when it comes to the floor and changing the floor in the exhibit hall. That changes use patterns. It changes our affiliate groups. It changes a whole bunch of things. So are we ready to take that bite, or what can we do in the interim? I'm intrigued by the idea of stage, that it has a longer season. That's a fun idea. So I think that's definitely worth exploring further. Might have some neighbor concerns, but have to deal with that as well.
Great. Thank you, Commissioner. That's a great question. For me, I would say the HVAC in that arena building is probably that would be more appealing to users than almost anything we could do. That alone, it would make it more appealing for events on that dirt floor. Even if that was the first bite we took, that would make a huge difference. It would make a huge difference during the fair. and for other events. And then realistically, I think, converting to the exhibit hall probably is the biggest economic driver for us. That's where we would get the most new customers, more events, more trade shows, and that type of thing. And so I would say it largely centers around the kind of elephant in the room, the big ticket building. But even if we were able to do HVAC first, floor second, breakout rooms third, if that was feasible, we could work our way toward that.
Well, I thought it was interesting in the potential market opportunities. The RV activities are, ability to compete and demand and revenue up there. And at first I thought, oh, what are we gonna do? Just build a bunch of RV facilities? And then I started thinking, well, what if we do? But so it sounds like we need to wait and see how the Philomath area shakes out. But, is there opportunity there to use that to fund land acquisition and bring in revenue until we're in the green, or I don't know. Just interesting thoughts.
I think RV facilities are going to continue to be incredibly popular. Yeah, it really is. I mean, a lot of campgrounds are even reverting from tent sites at all in a lot of cases because the revenue can be so good. We get a share of that RV revenue as well. So increased spaces would be beneficial. So
Which we could do if we had more space.
yeah, we could. Yeah, we would definitely. I mean, we sell out during the summertime. The place is packed. It's hard to get a reservation. And so, and every OSU game day weekend, but it's really more of a summertime thing. But we saw big increases. We used to do longer term stays there to help kind of keep our revenue up. And we moved away from that, especially once we saw kind of during, the height of the COVID pandemic, everybody wanted to get out in their RVs. So we kind of felt like, let's get rid of that longer term stay stuff and really make this a recreational facility, bring people to Corvallis and Benton County. And so it's still heavily used. September is a big time for us too, just because so many parents are coming to see their kids off to OSU, and so they love to stay here during Parents Weekend. I would say we probably couldn't build enough RV facilities in Benton County.
Question about the commercial kitchen, and that you really want to ramp it up. What are the barriers? Is it that there are a lot of commercial kitchens, or do we, right? And we do charge a fee?
We do charge a fee. And so that's something, so we're going to be working with the Fair Board to bring our kind of proposed fee structure back to the board here after our next meeting. And that's something that, we'd like to make sure that we have some real set accessible pricing options for that kitchen. But I'd say the biggest barrier is the fact that if you use that facility, you have to use the auditorium's restrooms, conference room in order to access. And so I don't know how to describe it. Almost like it breaks the seal. If we have, say the Islamic Center rents that facility out for some of their events, they can't have somebody making salsa and the whole place, smells like salsa and using their restrooms if we have it set up for them. And so that is a challenge that we're still trying to work through. And we really hope that there might be an engineering solution to that with just the way that our entryway works to the restroom. We might be able to figure something out there because, essentially if somebody wants to use the kitchen for the day, it's tough for some other group to do their wedding.
And also religious observations.
Yes.
For example, work.
Yeah, that too.
Anything as well.
That's right. Yeah. So, so there are some challenges and but we kind of hope that eventually we can figure out some engineering, but for right now, it's more about just kind of Tetrising and puzzle piecing. Well, when can we use the commercial kitchen? When do we need it out of use so that the quinceanera can come in and they can decorate the day before and have everything set up and have nobody using the restrooms that they will be using for their event, that type of thing. So that's been a challenge for that facility for us from day one, but nothing we can't overcome. We've been in a lot of talks with Lynn Benton Community College about hosting more classes out there. We spoke to some Latinx business enterprise groups that might be interested in using the space. So we're working hard to try to get to that point where we can really be proud of how often we're using it.
I think, go ahead.
I was just going to, and similar to, as Commissioner Odro alluded to earlier, in terms of we start thinking about the master plan and the prioritization. I mean, Jesse and his staff done an incredible job in terms of leveraging grants and opportunities to really pick off some of these smaller type projects. I think though, at some point, the decision around, exhibit hall, if that is a direction that we're going to go, I think that there's some other possibilities. And, I always tread cautiously with this 4-letter word of debt, but the difference here is that you do have a couple dedicated resources. Number one, you have a transit lodging tax that we've accumulated. And so that's a source for debt if you're wanting to look at being able to, so long as you're using for a particular type project, can be careful to not get in trouble with Vance on that. But so that's a particular opportunity. But in addition, Jesse and I have talked about, you're dealing with the enterprise fund here. So the idea of bringing an exhibit hall to Benton County creates new economic opportunities and potential revenue source opportunities that could be pledged against that particular debt. And so I do have a call into our financial advisors and lead underwriters. I promised Jesse I would check into just exploring, what do other counties do around debt issuance relations to enterprise type activities, where again, you're forecasting out potential revenues that could come in and dedicate. You already have a transit lodging tax. So I just want to put that on the table because, we can continue to move along in terms of picking some of these smaller type projects. I know we're going to get there, but at some point, if one of these larger ones is a direction we want to go, that's going to open up everything else. We probably should have some serious conversation about financing because we're not going to get it through. I mean, I can just say we're not going to get it through an award. I don't know that there's any grant that we would be able to get to that kind of size. We've heard what our lobbyists have said about the optimism of revenue down the road. So I just want to put that out there for you. And if that's a conversation we want to enter into, we can kind of get deep into it to find out what's possible.
And presently, Rick, what is our capital plan right now? We have a lot of structures that are under construction or haven't broken ground.
Sure. Yeah.
So we have to look at the capacity of
And I'm not advocating for jumping out, on this immediately, because any type of financing like this, as you all know, takes a while to put together. We also want to see those favorable interest rates start to come back, and we have a signal that interest rates might be easing. So I'm not suggesting jump out immediately, but if this is something you're thinking about doing the homework and being ready when the time is right, it takes some doing to pull something like this together.
So it sounds like there's a balance between our staff capacity and planning and preparing.
Absolutely. And
strike that balance.
Yeah. And again, I think, our focus obviously is finishing up on the big ones here. We need to keep doing that, but trying to also think ahead as it relates to the future and when that timing does. And, again, this will take some studies, some analysis, a few years out before you probably even to the point of issuing debt.
I want to do a time check. I think we're just up at the time, but I don't want to cut the conversation short. Were you going to say something else? I saw Commissioner Odro might have had her camera on sooner, but Commissioner Malone, did you have a comment?
Jesse, you mentioned HVAC in the current exhibit hall. Could you do that and still keep, would that be useful if, like Rick's talking about, 2 or 3 years from now, we're able to move forward on a full remodel?
I think so, as long as they could handle a HVAC system with dirt and dust like that. That's my only concern. I don't really know if that's feasible. But if that was feasible, it's hot. It's hot in that building. There's not much airflow. And it never really has had it. So I would hope so. We'd have to look into that.
Anecdotally, at Fair, seems like the exhibit hall there's fewer exhibitors and, oh, if you want to spread out
Yes.
your model train set or have all the room you can.
Yeah.
And, you know, it's such a crapshoot. It depends on the weather. This year, the weather was, except for Thursday, was pretty helpful. But next year, completely different. And I'm sure some exhibitors remember the 100-degree days and no foot traffic and being miserable.
Yeah.
I've got better things to do.
That's right.
So, maybe you can attribute part of it to climate change, but also people are used to air conditioning. 40 years ago, at least around here, air conditioning in cars was not standard. I think you'd have a hard time finding a car without it. And so you get used to being comfortable and shocked when you go into the exhibit hall. Other question, the data that we have is from 2019, and we're talking about $1 million projects. Would it be wise to go back to St. Markham or to just freshen up some of the data?
That would be great. We'd be happy to inquire on that. It would be nice to know exactly what we're talking about at this point, so we could inquire what that might look like.
Because it's not just 5 years, it's COVID and things are different. Some things, and it seems like we've got it's great having the master plan, and I think we've, all things considered, done a good job at moving forward. But I guess I would feel more comfortable if the data was a little fresher. I mean, just post-COVID.
Great. We'll take a look. We'll reach out and find out what that might cost. And all that.
Okay.
Commissioner Ogerow.
Thank you. Well, I want to go back to what Rick was saying and say that I think it would be a great idea to explore the idea of TLT financed debt. But I would really want to see a phased plan for the exhibit hall and how we could best use those funds in order to make that work. And I also think we should be working towards that the change in layout so that people can really see on the ground that vision. Along with just paving and taking care of the infrastructure that we have for safety reasons, changing that traffic flow and just changing the feel of the fairgrounds might be something that is inspiring to people.
That's good input. I agree. Going to the state fair and seeing some of the things that work really well there and some of the things that don't, it's helpful.
I know we mentioned recently about the need for repaving out at the fairgrounds. How does that fit into?
That's another one that, and the cost of that could potentially be up to the point of another, sizable master plan project. So right now, Public Works has been gracious enough to kind of jump in and do some estimates for us, high end, low end, piecemealing it kind of thing to improve some of those surfaces and potentially kind of like what Commissioner Ogerow was talking about, like in the master plan, creating some paths and elements that really feel special, not just a asphalt area.
Yeah, okay.
And I would second the notion that Commissioner Ogerow, I really like the idea of more of a real entrance and a tree-lined walkway heading north, and then you have clean buildings to the right and animals to the left. And just be better to show there's some thoughtful organization instead of, well, you wander around, you'll probably find what you.
Walk in through the Brandis field and yeah, there's goats here and there's an RV park there. It's pretty random. Yeah, it really is.
One last question, and for Rick, are you, current, status of the TLT as far as?
I knew you were gonna ask that.
I always ask that, Rick.
The balance that we have, actually, I looked it up while you were talking, just to see where we're at as of today. This is through collections, 3 of 8 collections for this biennium. So we still got 5 more collections of TLT, but we're at approximately $1.1 million available at this point. By the end of the biennium, as you recall, when we were talking at the beginning of the start of this, we thought we'd be somewhere around 2 to 2.5.
And with football looking like it's doing the good old days, I think that helps us this quarter quite a bit.
Mhm. Oh, yeah, no, definitely, the quarterly amounts that we've been receiving continue to be higher than the previous year. And on top of that, compounded is the better interest earnings that we're achieving on those TLT proceeds. So we are ahead of budget.
Could you please remind me on the revenue split, the, 70% tourism, 30% general fund? Is that, are we sending 30% to our general fund? Are we using the 70% for tourism? Is that the 1.1 or is that?
The 1.1 I mentioned is just the tourism piece. So it's just the portion that we send to the fair fund. The rest of it, it goes into the general fund to support some operations as well as some other stuff. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you. All right.
Does it seem like the amounts coming in, you were saying higher than previous?
They're higher than the previous years, a little bit, not a lot, but they are gradually smaller, but they're consistent. Unlike, remember COVID, they've gotten consistent to where we get much more predictable.
I think we had 2 quarters of TLT before COVID. Oh, looking pretty good.
Yeah.
Projections, and then, oh, nothing. Huh.
Yeah, it went away quite a bit.
Thanks.
Any other comments or questions? Hearing none.
Well, I'm glad we have a master plan and because it doesn't matter what project, you can show the potential funder or users. We do have a plan and that we are making progress on it.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, Jesse.
Thanks, Jesse.
So I'm going to call for a short break, a 5-minute break, and when we come back, we will come back to item 3.3, discussion regarding agritourism. So we'll be back at just around. We're ready to get back to it, and we are up to item 3.3, discussion regarding agritourism. Welcome, Petra and James. Thank you for coming.
Well, good morning, everybody. Thank you for having us. This is a continuation of our last meetings around agritourism. The definitive difference between the allowance of agritourism and the unfortunately not approvable allowances is public zoning. So the zoning distinctions between exclusive farm use and agricultural industrial zones primarily revolves around the allowable activities. EFU wineries are regulated through state statute that require land use approval and an approval for agritourism allowances.
Sorry, can I interrupt you just a second? Could you get that microphone a little bit closer to you? Oh, is it green now?
Red is on, correct?
These ones are opposite. Green is on.
Green is on.
Yes.
Oh, great.
Okay, well, let's try it. So Commissioner Ojo was having issues hearing, so try again and see if that's better.
Is this better? Can you hear me?
Sorry, yes, much better. Thank you.
Okay. Well, I'll start over if that's okay. So this meeting is for a continuation regarding agritourism and the allowance of agritourism on properties.
Now, the allowance of agritourism is based upon the zoning under our current code. Wineries are allowed within EFU and agricultural industrial properties. EFU is regulated through state statute 215, of which allows and has the allowance for agritourism. Our current code for agricultural industrial zones does not have the allowance for agritourism. That being said, we are underway with doing a update to our comprehensive plan to address these issues, to make sure that if we do allow for agritourism within an agricultural industrial zone, that it does not result in conflicts with neighboring properties. That's it in a summary. I really apologize.
No, well, so I think some of this was spurred by the issue of wineries wanting to have food trucks.
Yes.
And we have an example of a winery that, you know, the main competition is zone EFU. They are not, they're zone the agricultural industrial, so therefore they can't have the food truck, but their main competition can. So my interest is, how do we help them? What is the quickest, easiest way to help them get to where they can have that food truck? Do we need to do a zone change to EFU? Can we change the agricultural industrial zone to allow for food trucks? I mean, I don't know. That's why.
So, yeah, in the background material, so we can talk, background material that you received, we do have a comp plan timeframe. So we can pull that up if we need to, but.
You want us to pull it?
Sure, that would be great.
As she's also typing.
Yeah, it's just, there's just 6 slides there that describe it, but the last slide, or second to last slide, I believe, just kind of talks a little bit about the process, and where we're at. So the answer, the quickest way to change would be yes, a rezone would be. That is an expensive choice. And also looking into the way that the property's been built out, it's actually highly unlikely that would be eligible to revert to EFU because it no longer meets the criteria. Okay. So that's. Yes,
Yeah, there it
thank
is.
you. And this was actually came up as Vance's idea is could this be a permitted use in agricultural, industrial? And I think that the answer is yes, because that is one that is not state regulated. We could add that to, and it's just a matter of, do we go through a whole entire legislative process for a single line of permitted use and change the development code on that point, with the consideration about the optics of this benefiting a single property owner? And also the fact that we have a lot of preliminary conversations with property owners that have a lot of different vital interests around agricultural issues and agritourism, who are working with us and providing us their feedback through the comprehensive plan public outreach effort on a lot of other issues as well. And they're pretty much, we kind of have a consortium of grassroots efforts so that we can take all of our recommendations through the comp plan process together. And the time frame for that is we have a strategic public outreach plan that should be done in the next 6 months. And the comp plan update and development code phase 2 policy work should be done in the next year to 18 months.
Question, when you have property owners and business owners approach you and you tell them about the comprehensive plan, is the general advice, hold off, it's coming, as opposed to them, filing individual type of exhibit?
Exactly. And so we have a whole bunch of folks that are really chomping at the bit, pointing out weaknesses in the code and win-wins. And where we have statutory weaknesses. And so, as you know, right now, we're auditing the code to make sure that we come up to our statutory requirements. We did an audit, like going back to 2008 with our consultant, and have pulled out about 20 House and Senate bills that we need to incorporate in this first phase. And it's going to take a little bit longer than we thought it was going to be. So we're still kind of negotiating the most important components of that. There's some really obscure ones that we may not want to pursue, just kind of value engineering the process. But we are on that same path, but it is, that is a precursor to being able to do the policy work, I think, so that we have kind of a blank slate of an accurate code to work from. But to answer your question with less words, there's been a lot of collaboration, and the folks, and particularly the agricultural community, do understand and are on board with following the comp plan process as a group of stakeholders.
So am I understanding you correctly by hearing that this individual, if waiting through this process, it might be a year to a year and a half before they would be able to legally have a food cart?
Yes.
I very much, respect our process, and I'm sensitive to the optics that it looks like we're, favoring one person, but we did go, we had a board meeting, we went through a process, we said, yay, now all the wineries can have food carts, and then that turned out that wasn't the case. And so, I'm just interested in any way that we could figure out to expedite it. So just, is there a Band-Aid fix? Could we do a temporary code change knowing that the bigger stuff is coming later?
If I may.
Yes, please.
Well, I apologize for the confusion at the last meeting. My intention at that meeting was to provide a reinterpretation of specific coding within Chapter 55 that would then allow for food carts. My goal for that was to harmonize that with adjacent counties as well and state statutes. After that meeting, I just like to put this on record, I also sent out letters to every winery explaining in detail the approval process and the pathway forward towards food carts specifically. Going forward, I just want to be cautious that if we do approve agritourism within agricultural industrial zones, there are many properties out there that are zoned agricultural industrial that would then be automatically granted the ability to have wineries, to have concert series, to have food carts. So it is a cautious aspect of mine. I just want to ensure that we're not causing adverse impacts to surrounding properties.
Sure. And so first of all, thank you for all the work that you did previously. I think you did a great job at that. I don't have any issue with any of that. And I do, I like to try to think of unintended consequences. And yes, is there some, property out there that's zoned agricultural industrial that it's not appropriate for them to have a food truck because they're not a winery and maybe they're dealing with some nasty stuff. I don't know. So I do want to make sure we're not.
All of them except for the two wineries. Is one winery?
Two wineries.
Two wineries.
And both under wind zone changes.
So, isn't there a way to say, well, if you have a winery in the agritour or in the AI, then you can have a food truck, rather than just saying all AI can have a food truck no matter what?
Yes, that's an option.
Yes.
Okay. It sounds like that might not be ideal, but again, is there a way that we can change it quicker in sort of a temporary fashion, or in a fashion that we know is only going to be for so long until we come out with the rest of the codes?
The board can always make a decision that this is the priority that it wishes planning staff to pursue. And you can direct staff to make an immediate change. There are, I guess, 2 points that really are the red flags here. One, of course, which we just mentioned, was the unintended consequences. The nice thing about running the potential code change through the comp plan assessment is you get an opportunity, we get an opportunity, the consultant gets an opportunity, planning staff gets an opportunity to really evaluate that ripple effect. And so we won't always know how far ranging a decision reaches, but we'll have a pretty good idea if we take that more deliberate approach. The other one, which may be, from my perspective, much more challenging, is we have probably dozens, dozens of people who have been waiting for a code update or a comp plan update so that remedies can be advanced for challenges they face on their property. They've been waiting years. And now to have the board determine that one specific problem should jump the line over those other folks who've been working cooperatively with us and patient. I'm not sure the message, how that would be received from some of those folks who've been very patient. So I think that's the one of the really big hurdles we face by doing our comp plan change, so irregularly. We have a lot of pent up angst, pent up, hopes and desires that something's going to change. And by pushing that whole process forward, we address a lot of people's concerns and problems at the same time, as opposed to piecemeal folks who may, have a louder voice or may be able to reach different people. So I think those are the two issues to keep in mind. If this is a direction you wish to go, certainly the board can direct staff to make a change, but note that there are, it's never easy. It's never
Sure, yeah.
And there likely will be opposition from competition for that winery.
Type of food truck.
For the same reasons as they want one,
So if they were to apply, I'm not sure the process that they go to, excuse me, have a food truck. Someone needs to apply for one. Like community development or no, or I'm just thinking, like, could they apply? If they get told no, could they appeal it to planning commission? I don't know what path it takes.
Apply for a food truck or
Yeah.
apply for legislative change for.
Just for a food, so how does a winery go about saying, hey, can I now have a food truck? Like, what's the process for that?
So a winery goes through a land use approval process first to establish as a winery. Once they do that, the public notice goes out, the notice of decision, standard pathway. Then they come back and apply for agricultural events that will be renewed every 5 years. Depending on the degree or number of agritourism events, 1 to 7 or 8 to 15. It's different review criteria.
Events per year.
Events per year, correct. With each allowance of a food truck triggers an agritourism event. Now, we're not going to double count if they have a concert series and a food truck all in one property, but that would be the pathway forward. These EFU properties go to environmental health initially for the food handlers sign off. Environmental health notifies planning, and we cross-reference to make sure that they have the allowable agritourism events.
So I guess, Mike, what I'm trying to figure out is where in the process do they get told, when they get told, no, you can't have a food truck, what's their path forward from there? Where can they appeal it to, or who do they talk to say, can somebody else make a decision on this? There is not one.
No, it's a ministerial review.
There's no appeals of ministerial reviews. Okay. Well, I think Commissioner Malone, you might have started to say something. I would like to hear from the other commissioners, of course.
Wrote a couple things down. I like consistency, which we don't have now. That's the goal, and it's going to take some time. I'm not a big fan of, okay, you made some noise and we'll fix it for you. And then, I've been waiting patiently in line for the comprehensive plan update and I guess one thing that's important is if we go forward, waiting for the comprehensive plan update to get the word out to the general community. This is what we're doing. This is why we're doing it. This is how long it's going to take. Less than ideal. It's impacting some, a couple businesses negatively. This may be the best path forward. And because it's easy to have some information out there that's not quite complete, and they're being mean to us, and this isn't fair. It's, yeah. But there was a decision made decades ago, put you in the ag industrial zoning, and it's the best way to move forward is to do a thoughtful process and make sure we're not fixing it over here and causing problems over here, to make sure that we take the time to get it right. So I would love to keep everybody happy, but we're not going to do that, no matter what the decision is. So I think going forward with the best plan and making sure we explain it to the wider community may be the best we can do at this point.
Commissioner Ojo?
I would agree with Commissioner Malone. I would love to help this winery resolve its issues in the near term, but I think that there is a risk of unintended consequences, and I know that there are other pent-up interests regarding agritourism more broadly. So I think that the appropriate place to deal with the questions is in the context of the plan update. Because we're going to be doing extensive community engagement, we'll be able to get a much better and more rounded perspective on the changes that we want to make to the code. And then secondarily, but probably no less importantly, even a quick fix to the code to remedy the situation for this, for the two wineries that are in the ag industrial zone, would take a lot of staff time because it requires all the hearings processes, et cetera. And given that we're in the middle of the comp plan update and we have other major initiatives going on in community development, I'm not sure that that's what we want to prioritize since we have the comp plan process underway already.
Thank you. Well, I can definitely agree to the, anything worth doing is worth doing right. And I generally think we should, take a step back and view the whole situation broadly. I also think though, if we go down the street to Safeway and stop some people and say, hey, some of our wineries can't have a food truck, isn't that silly? They'd say, yeah, that's silly, you should fix it. Okay, well, that's gonna take 1.5 years. You're gonna say, oh, sounds like, government bureaucracy. So I mean, Commissioner Malone is right. There will always be people that are unhappy. And I think either way on this, there's potential for the optics to not look good. So anyway, I appreciate our constituents that reached out and shared their concerns with us. It does sound like 2 commissioners are in favor of just going along with the process as it has already been determined and waiting for the whole comp plan project to conclude. So just to double check, like this will be a piece of that. So we're not going to get to 1.5 years and say, okay, well, we decided not to do that after we made you wait 1.5 years.
Right, so one of the things, so staff in the back of their minds have a lot of things that are top priorities just based on the organizational experience. But we want to make sure that that the community leads which themes that we want to focus on. That being said, we've already in the preliminary discussions already heard what some of the top themes are. And the agritourism and EFU land is definitely one of the themes I think that we've heard a lot of, and just to share the others. Housing, ADUs, and transportation have also we've heard a lot of that as well. So, and density in unincorporated areas and how to accomplish that if that's possible. So, but we'll be interested to see what else comes through the process. So,
Terry, did you say density in unincorporated areas?
increasing densities in unincorporated areas.
Okay, that's that raises some red flags for me, but that sounds like a conversation for another day.
Yeah.
Okay.
Part of the public information, I think, should be the board decided last spring to go forward with the comprehensive plan update and with the help of state dollars. So there was a significant grant to help to encourage this process. And, I would want to make sure that's part of the discussion. But we decided well before this came up to proceed, and the state thinks it's such a wonderful idea that here's some, seemed like there was significant funding to help with the effort. And this is a comprehensive plan update and not, and like you were saying, the audit and trying to clean up what we currently have before moving forward. So I think there's a decent message in here that needs to get out.
Just a quick comment into Commissioner Wise, you said earlier about sort of the public perception of such a long process. But I think the value of this work, this great work that community development is working on, once it's all complete, my understanding is, because it has been somewhat irregular in terms of getting comprehensive plan update, it will be a much more seamless process in terms of updating code going forward. Correct. So I would think that, again, while it's unfortunate now, in the future, I would imagine these type of things could be addressed more readily. Is that a safe statement?
Right. So, I mean, there's, after legislative decisions, statutory requirement is to incorporate those changes into your code within a 1-year period. So I would suggest that on an annual basis, you batch all of those changes and on a date every year, you just have a regimented process to make sure that they're all incorporated.
And we should make hard note of that, because I know that was the plan years ago. It just never quite happened.
Okay. Yeah.
So I guess the last thing I'll say is just I just want to be able to set reasonable expectations for people too. So, I don't want to tell somebody, yeah, just keep waiting. Like if we know that they will never be able to have a food truck, I'd rather just say, this isn't going to work out for you, but it sounds like that's not what we're saying. So.
No, I think that, and then I think that the state is also, they hear from their constituents as well. And there's additional movement in the agritourism discussions. So we may see some changes, some bills coming through the next year and a half that elaborates on the industry, the agritourism industry, and allows for more diverse uses for more diverse types.
This initial implementation of the agritourism was created at the state level in partnership with OLCC, the Oregon Wine and Garden Association, and DLCD as well.
Well, and I think the state's role in this process should be part of the message that farms aren't the same as they were 50 years ago. There's and so trying to update the rules to fit what's actually happening in rural areas. And, you know, the whole agritourism. I know last session, a couple sessions, legislative sessions ago, it was weddings and how many weddings or other events can you have per year in EFU zones. And so this is, I'm fairly confident in saying this is an ongoing process, trying to have our rules keep up with what is going on in the rural areas and what people would like to go on. And it's a balance. You turn a area that's 20 miles from town into a venue, and what does that do to the neighbors? And so it's a balance as someone who lives in EFU land.
I think it would probably be good for someone to reach out to the owners, just to kind of close the loop with them. Normally, I feel like the most appropriate person would be the chair. But Commissioner Ogier, I know you're feeling under the weather. How would you feel about reaching out to them and having a chat, or alternatively, I don't know, maybe Rick or Rachel, but I know Rick, you and I were communicating about this more. So what are your thoughts, Commissioner Ogier? Oh, you're muted.
Thank you. I think I would very much appreciate it if someone else could take the lead. I did let the Chapels know that this meeting was occurring today. They may or may not watch it. I think that it would be a good idea to let them know that we are going to address the situation in the context of the comprehensive plan, as appears that we are is to be the emerging consensus here, which means that there'll be one more season that they will be unable to host a food truck.
Thank you. Rick, would you be willing and have time to reach out?
So happy to, what we can do is maybe with Ben's help, we can just draft up something and then we'll decide, do you want that to come from Commissioner Ogier or do you want that to come from staff? Either way, but we can ghostwrite it for you.
And then maybe even just a quick call to say, hey, we're sending this over to your way. You know, I think that would be a nice touch. Any other comments or questions? Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you.
Get back to work. Thanks.
So unfortunately, our colleague Sean McGuire is also under the weather and not able to join us today. So we are removing item 3.4. I guess that would have been a good thing for me to say at the beginning of the meeting.
But you also found out you were going to be running the meeting 3 minutes before.
So we are removing item 3.4. We are rescheduling that for our next Board of Commissioners meeting. And so with that, we will move to item 3.5, our broadband update.
Well, good morning, everybody. I'm Joe Fresnel with Rural Prosperity Partners. My colleague Rachel Maddock Hughes had hoped to be here as well this morning, but she ended up with an unavoidable conflict. And so you guys are stuck with me, I'm afraid. I apologize that you're getting, and I'm not really the second string, but so good morning. It's been a while since you guys have gotten an update from us. And so a lot has happened and a lot is still going on. And so I'll go through it as expeditiously as possible, allowing for time for questions and discussion about what's going on with broadband in Oregon and in Benton County. So next slide, please. So the first real grant opportunity that would help with broadband in the state was called the Broadband Technical Assistance Program, or BTAP. And Benton County was part of an application to try to get technical assistance to move our plan better, I think, for broadband, and was unsuccessful in getting that. There were 27 complete applications covering 33 counties and 2 tribes. And the total ask was 4.4 million for what was only a pot of $1.5 million. There were additional funds available in the State Broadband Fund, and Rural Prosperity Partners did advocate, along with a number of others, for those funds to be allocated for additional broadband technical assistance grants around the state, since there was such a high demand. And the legislature did briefly have it on their emergency board meeting agenda, but then it fell off at the last minute. We don't know why. And so additional funds were not allocated. So unfortunately, Benton County did not get any of the Broadband Technical Assistance Program, or BTAP funds. Next slide, please. The first big infrastructure grant is called the Broadband Deployment Program, or BDP. And these were ARPA dollars. So this is where that money came from, was from ARPA. The application window opened, and it's, again, for infrastructure, so solving problems actually to the home. The window opened on March 25th and closed on April 25th. So there was a 30-day window, which was really, really tight for applicants to pull together a full application for BDP. Still, because there's so much demand, the Broadband Office received 63 applications requesting nearly 445 million for a pool of only 157 million. So again, the oversubscription, significantly more demand. Those are actually being scored right now, and so we don't expect to hear anything until probably October on the broadband deployment program. It could be a little later. One of the reasons why there's a push to try and get this done expeditiously is it took a long time for the State Broadband Office to actually get things structured to open the grant application window. We had a piece of legislation on the books, I think it was Senate Bill 1403, and that may be wrong, but it was it specified that no money out of the broadband fund could be dedicated to infrastructure if there was at least 25 megabits download and 3 megabits upload, which was, basically when that law was passed, that was already not enough bandwidth or speed for broadband for homes. And so we couldn't actually distribute the ARPA funds. So there had to be a legislative fix, which there was, now allowing the State Broadband Office and the PUC, I think, to decide what is the appropriate threshold. So right now, that appropriate threshold is, to be considered served, you need 100 megabits download and 2 megabits or 20 megabits upload. So that compressed the window for ARPA. These ARPA funds all have to be expended by December 31st of 2026. So they're trying to get these grants awarded to allow the builders to actually get the infrastructure built in a 24-month window, which is really, really tight when you're building infrastructure. It's not the construction necessarily that's the issue, but often the permitting. can be a problem. And so, especially if there are any federal lands involved. So there were a couple of applications and you can see on the map over on the right, those purple dots are where there were applications to build infrastructure. And those purple dots represent unserved or underserved locations that were targeted with this infrastructure build. So it was Oregon Cascades West Council of Government, Regional Broadband Priorities in partnership with Pioneer Telephone, a longtime partner in your area in bringing fiber to the home. So they filed an application to build 181 miles of fiber infrastructure serving 1,625 locations. Again, we should hopefully hear the results of that in October. That's what we're hoping. Next slide, please. And I'll take questions anytime. You don't have to wait to the end. I do have a slide at the end that says questions, but if somebody has a question about one of these, I'm happy to answer it while we're going through the presentation.
Yeah, I'd like, being a Pioneer Telephone subscriber, I know they've gotten a couple significant grants already, and I think $25 million. Do you know how this BDP fits in with what they already have? Are they trying to serve different?
This would be different areas so that are not covered by the RDOF grants that they got. So when the the BDP map, eligibility map was produced by the broadband office, it excluded any area that already had received federal funding. And so this application will fill in some of the big gaps in between those areas where Pioneer has already received federal funding or is receiving in the process of receiving federal funding. So this will actually add to the number of homes that get fiber, assuming it's awarded. Yeah. Did that answer your question?
Yes, I think I'm one of the purple dots there.
Oh, well, we should put a little gold star on that one, shouldn't we?
And Joe, just to add, if you remember, the result of our broadband study was that Benton County, relative to other counties in our area, was actually in pretty good shape.
Yeah.
And some of that is because of those prior awards to Pioneer. This last application is really our best hope to make any use of this money to improve broadband in Benton County. So we're really hoping this works out for Pioneer, but that's, moving from a baseline compared to other counties, Benton County was in pretty good shape.
Yeah, we Rural Prosperity Partners has done work with a number of other counties, and and one of those being Harney County. And you compare Benton County to Harney County, and wow, you guys are in a lot better shape than Harney County. I don't know how we solve the Harney County problem as a state. It's so challenging. It's so big. And the density is so thin, and there's no real business plan to solve the problem. So, for the commissioners and the citizens of Benton County, you guys really are in good shape. And a lot of that has to do with, and I'm not advocating for Pioneer Telephone, but, I call out good work when I see it, and Pioneer Telephone has really been doing good work in your area. So you guys have a good partner in Pioneer Telephone. All right. Anything else on that before we move on to BEAD? BEAD, so the Broadband Equity Access and Deployment, or BEAD program, is coming out of the big infrastructure bill at the federal level. And that infrastructure bill is huge. And there was, I think $47 billion set aside for broadband infrastructure. And that was divided up by state. And the states are actually managing that within guardrails that were set up by the NTIA. And the NTIA is the executive branch telecommunications group. So they're the folks who work directly for the president who are managing this BEAD program. And so they've set up rules, and within those guardrails, the states can put together their own rules as long so they can be more restrictive. They can't be less restrictive. And they had choices on how they're going to administer that within the NTIA guidance. And so each state had to pull together 2 volumes of guidance or rules. The first volume was and those then had to be approved by the NTIA. The first volume had to do with the challenge process, and the challenge process is not challenging somebody who got a grant. This is a challenge process that is challenging the map so that we can make sure that we have the most accurate broadband map going into the BEAD application process. So volume 1 was approved, and the challenge process took place April through May. So if you wanted to be a potential applicant, you had to participate in the challenge process, even if you didn't challenge anything. You just had to kind of register so that they knew that you were part of the process going forward. Volume 2 is the actual rules on how the money is going to be distributed. So what the grant process looks like, what the rules are for the grant, what the rules are for pre-application, all of those are in volume 2. And we were the 10th state in the nation to get volume 2 approved. Volume 2 was approved in June, I think. And so they're going through and they're curing all of the BEAD map, and they've pulled together what that pre-application process looks like, which is the next step. So if you want to be a part of, or you think you might need to be a part of an application for BEAD, and that's again, $688 million for broadband infrastructure has been allocated to Oregon. You have to pre-qualify. So we thought when I sent this slide deck, we thought pre-qualification was going to start August 21st, because that's when all that curing and everything was done. It didn't start, but they've had a couple of webinars about how they're going to do the pre-qualification. Pre-qualification for ISPs is pretty challenging. For governmental entities is a little less challenging, but it's almost like a grant application in itself. You know, it requires a legal opinion, audited financials, all the biographies of key individuals who are involved. It's pretty thorough. So one of the things I wanted to talk about pre-qualification is, and pre-qualification, as they're going through, they're giving us as much time to get ready for the pre-qualification phase, because if you don't pre-qualify, you can't participate in BEAD at all going forward. So if you find out later that you needed to participate, you didn't pre-qualify, you wouldn't be able to. So we're recommending that governmental entities like Benton County go ahead and pre-qualify. Now, here's how that might look. And I'm going to use Josephine County as an example. So I'm going to make it simple. One of your neighbors to the south, Josephine County has 2 school districts, and BEAD is going to be the applications have to be by school district. So that's how the state has chosen to approach solving the digital divide, is a whole school district. So an applicant can't apply for just like what we saw with BDP, and an applicant's just filling in gaps. An applicant has to say, I'm going to take this whole school district and every unserved and underserved location in that school district, I'm going to solve for with my grant application. So in Josephine County, there are 2 school districts. There's the school district around Grants Pass, which is pretty easy because there's density there. And so that one isn't going to be hard to solve or find somebody to apply for. But then there's the other school district, which is the whole rest of the county. And if you've been outside of Grants Pass in Josephine County, you know, it's a lot like Benton County. Hills, trees, you know, going up toward the mountains. And so it's really, really hard to solve for. There is discussion right now about Josephine County taking the lead and having 3 ISPs who have been engaged in their broadband action team participate as a consortium to split up that big school district. But it's cleaner instead of having one of those ISPs take the lead and the others be subordinate, which no ISP is going to do that, than having the county take the lead on the application with a consortium or a group of partners with these ISPs splitting up that large school district and applying. That could work. And I don't know if they're going to pull it off, but I know that they've talked about pre-qualifying. Harney County has talked about pre-qualifying. Lane County is pursuing pre-qualification just for that purpose. Not that they want to be the internet service provider at all. They just want to make sure that there's a mechanism to solve the problems in their county, even if they have to take the lead working with ISPs as subordinate applicants. So that is coming up soon, and that's something that I recommend. Rural Prosperity Partners recommends that you guys look at is pre-qualification as a county, and just in case you need that, and that way you can participate. Now, one of the other interesting things about BEAD is that there is a federal mandate that that we solve the problem for every unserved and underserved location in Oregon. So in order to get the $688 million, we have to have a plan to do that. So we have to have applications to cover all of that. So everyone expects, and the broadband office has talked about, there's a strong likelihood of multiple rounds of applications, because in the first round of applications, we expect that maybe some significant chunks of Oregon are not going to have an applicant in round 1. And so once round 1 is done, that opens the opportunity for the broadband office to go out and negotiate with those who have pre-qualified to perhaps come up with a way or a plan. And I don't know if they're going to be able to loosen the rules, but it sounds like they might in round 2 or round 3. And so being available as a pre-qualified applicant to have those conversations about gaps that no one applied for in your county is a great place to be. If you don't pre-qualify, you can't have those conversations in round 2 or round 3 with the broadband office. So that's the big one. And we expect pre-qualification the window will open up sometime really soon. I mean, they've been warning us the window will open. It's only a 30-day window on pre-qualification. So questions on BEAD, and I do have a timeline slide coming up next. I think are two slides away maybe. And so I can walk you through a little bit of the rest of the timeline when we see that slide.
Questions or comments for Joe?
All right. Yes, sir.
I'm confused.
I'm sorry, I didn't mean to confuse you.
Just coordination between the different programs, and you haven't got to all of them yet. I guess my main concern is that these programs fit together and in some kind of comprehensive package. Is that my dreaming, or?
No, you're absolutely right. There was a lot of discussion, but we knew all of this was starting to happen. a couple of years ago. And when all of this started to happen, I was still chair of the Broadband Advisory Council for the legislature in the governor's office. And so I was right in the middle of all of it and all the discussions. And, there were significant discussions about several things. One, we wanted to make sure that we had accurate map information so that we didn't award funds, precious dollars, because $688 million doesn't solve the problem in Oregon. So we have to be really careful with every dollar that we've got if we're going to be able to move the needle as far as the NTIA wants. So we didn't want to spend money overbuilding an existing provider just because we didn't know that the existing provider had service there, right? So getting the map right was the big deal. That was number one. And that's a moving target because people are still building infrastructure right now. I mean, it's not like the world stopped and fiber, the Blue Mountain Networks of the world and Zaos of the world and Hunter Communications of the world and Zipley's of the world and Comcast, all of those people didn't stop building infrastructure. So the map is changing all the time. So getting accurate data is really important. And that's a challenge because that data set is always moving. And that's where this challenge process was so important for BDP, getting the map more accurate, then BEAD, getting the map even more accurate through the BEAD process. And then the second concern at the state level was we wanted to make sure that all of these, because it seemed as if there were overlaps, and we wanted to make sure that we were doing everything we could as a state. And I know that even though I'm no longer with the Broadband Advisory Council, that initiative was really, really important to the state, is that they didn't overlap or they didn't have double awards. So, like RDOF or Reconnect, and that's another or Community Connect, a USDA, couple of USDA programs, or the BDP program, that we didn't have a whole bunch of overlap where we were awarding funds twice in the same area. So there is going to be some deconfliction because I expect, and people are already planning for BEAD based on the BEAD map. I know that because another hat that I wear, I'm president of an ISP, and part-time, I'm semi-retired from that role, but I'm still doing it. We're looking really strongly at BEAD and where do we apply for BEAD, and we're using that map. All the while, we're waiting to see the results of the BDP grant applications because we don't want to spend the engineering dollars and all of that to design a solution for something that is going to be served by BDP grants. And so, there is a lot of kind of, okay, how do we shuffle this? How do we make sure that we don't overlap? And I think that there will probably actually be some grant awards that they're going to have to come back and trim back because there was another grant that came in prior to that award that awarded funds between the time the grant application took place and the time. So say BEAD, there's a grant application for BEAD, and then they come down and they do awards. Well, BDP and Reconnect infrastructure grant are going to be awarded prior to BEAD being awarded. And so I suspect they're going to have to come back and say, okay, I understand you applied for all of this area here in Benton County to solve, but Pioneer Telephone got a Reconnect grant for this area, so we're going to have to take that out, right? And there's going to be some of that goes on. So they're not going to award twice in an area. There's not enough money to be sloppy. We have to be really, really careful. But so it's not confusion. I think you're just concerned, is what I heard, that, that we got all of this happening all at once, and how do you keep it all straight? And the broadband office is working really hard on that right now. So.
Okay, appreciate that, because we get occasional updates and you see big dollar amounts out there and just what does the flow on the ground look like? And I appreciate the discussion of, well, if something changes, we may trim back part of what was awarded in this area and put it to a better use, so.
Right, right. Yeah, we gotta be judicious with the money that's being given to us by the federal government through ARPA and through the transportation, our infrastructure bill. Because, you know, the estimates to solve for all of Oregon are significantly more than that total of BEAD and BDP. You know, I mean, we're pushing $1 billion, but that's, you know, when I was chair of the Broadband Advisory Council, we had a study done, and at that point, we said it would be 1.2 billion to get fiber to every household in Oregon. But, you know, inflation and what happened with the pandemic, COVID, and how that has impacted labor costs and materials costs, that number probably is closer to 1.8 billion today, maybe 2 billion to solve. And we're just getting about close to $1 billion in infrastructure dollars. So if we're going to really solve this problem for every household in Oregon, we have to be really, really careful with the money that we've got. And, you know, the ISPs are going to have to step in, and they continue to build, you know, so it's not like the world is standing still, but, you know, it's not a insignificant lift to build all of that infrastructure and build it in a way that's resilient too. I mean, there's no real requirement for resiliency as we build this. But, you know, anybody who's followed, you know, if you've been involved with the Association of Oregon Counties and what happened out east, you know, with the wildfires, and they had a single fiber line going out into Lake County and over into Harney County, and that got hit by fire, and there was no backup. So they lost everything, you know, or they were at risk of losing. I think they lost it briefly and they got it back, but they were at risk of losing all of their communications out east. And so, you know, making sure that we're focused on resiliency is really important too. And this is the thing. This is what levers do you have as a county? And one of the most significant levers that you can have to pull to make sure that when you're having discussions with internet service providers who want to build in your county, is you can actually negotiate with them on what you want to see done. So do you want some resiliency? Do you want to make sure that this little pocket of houses doesn't get left out, or this road up this canyon that's really challenging doesn't get left out? How do you negotiate with the ISP to do that? One of the requirements in the BEAD Handbook, Volume 2, these are the rules, says that an ISP has to have at least 50 letters of support from at least 50% of the governmental agencies that are within that school district, or their application will not be considered. So your letter of support carries a lot of weight. And that's a lever. And I'm not saying that I would use that as a hammer, but I would use that to make sure that you had the right discussion with the ISPs as they're pulling together their plans for applications for BEAD, to make sure that you get what you want out of there, or, you know, that you're able to negotiate that closer to what you want within reason. So don't forget that as a county, you have significant opportunity to negotiate with the ISPs who are applying in your area. All right.
Adam, a couple questions on BEAD before we move on.
Yes.
First one is, so we intentionally were going to address this topic a few weeks ago. We got bumped on the agenda. And so the news from Josephine is interesting. I'm curious though, he said the pre-application window opens soon, supposed to take 30 days. Do we know when the the choices on who they award when those happen for round one?
Well, now this is the application window for, or the pre-qualification window is just to pre-qualify. So what happened with, do you remember back when President Obama did the big, and we had the recession, and he did, what was it? I'm trying to remember the two acronyms, but he had two infrastructure initiatives, one of those being, or two of those actually being related to broadband. And I'm just spacing the acronyms for those two broadband infrastructure initiatives under President Obama. A lot of that money was wasted, or there was a lot of fraud at that time. And part of the big issue was they awarded grants to people who had never done infrastructure before. So they basically set themselves up for failure. And so there were hundreds of millions of dollars that were lost because they didn't vet the applicants well enough. With BEAD, they're going to be very, very careful that they only qualify people to apply who have experience, demonstrated experience, are in good standing with the state and the federal government. So don't have, complaints open, don't have, back taxes owed, or haven't not paid fees to the PUC, so they have to be in good standing. They have to be able to demonstrate that they built projects of similar size in the past. So BEAD is not an opportunity for a startup broadband company to come in and say, I can solve all of your problems, and with no demonstrated history of being able to do so. And so that window is the window that will take 30 days. Once that window is done, then they'll say, here are all the people who are qualified to apply. Then they'll open an application window for the actual grant, infrastructure grant. And so that's going to be fourth quarter, first quarter, and you'll see that on the timeline I've got in a subsequent slide. But that grant application window is preceded by this pre-qualification phase. And if I wasn't clear on that, I apologize. Does that make sense?
One other question then. So other similar grant opportunities, it seems like the county missed out on being awarded an opportunity because the criteria and the points values that we had compared to other counties was we didn't make the cut. So is the similar criteria being applied to BEAD, and how do you feel like Benton County's chances would be of getting any funding compared to those other opportunities?
Well, it's this interesting thing, and I mentioned this, but I don't know that I said it, emphatically enough. So in order to get the $688 million released to the state has to have a plan to solve the digital divide problem for every household in Oregon. So you will get BEAD money as long as you have somebody who applies, because they're going to have to, any unserved or underserved location in Benton County will have to be solved for. They will have to have a plan to get broadband to those locations, or they can't get the $688 million. So Benton County's, you're going to get the problem solved. It's just, how do you do that? Is that, Pioneer Telephone stepping up and just saying, we're going to do everything that's left? Or is that, a partnership between the county and Pioneer Telephone and and I'm not sure who, I should have looked this up, but who the other ISPs are in your county? How do you solve that problem? That's the question. It's not whether or not you're going to get money under BEAD. The only way you wouldn't get money under BEAD is if nobody applied for BEAD in Benton County, which I think is unlikely.
So to your comments earlier about the fact that there is not enough money to go around, so we will be awarded some money, just not enough to solve.
And we're still, as a state, we're still working through this. So ideally, in a perfect world, we would have enough money to build fiber to everybody, right? We know we don't have enough money to build fiber to everybody. So there's math that is going to have to be done. And, and it's this weird timing thing. The state broadband office doesn't really know how much it will cost to build to every location. So they're going to have, and this is why we know there are going to be multiple windows. They're going to actually take the applications that come in round one, and they're going to do the math, and they're going to they're going to determine what the high cost limit is for connecting a single household. So is that $10,000 to build fiber to a single household? Is it 12? Is it 18? We don't know what the math looks like yet, but they're gonna cut it off and say, okay, we're only gonna fund fiber to locations that cost this amount, a high cost limit or less. Every other location now is going to have to be served with a less expensive option, which would be fixed wireless, either licensed or likely unlicensed. The NTIA just released, the comment window closed yesterday on proposed rules that will allow for unlicensed fixed wireless and low Earth orbit satellite like Starlink to be an option. So then we're going to have to, anybody who applied in round one likely is going to have to go back and redo their application and say, okay, we're only going to build to these locations because they're the high cost limit or less to build to. And then we're going to build either a licensed or unlicensed fixed wireless, or we're going to somehow subsidize. And this is a big question nobody's answered yet, because and I talked to Starlink for an hour and a half a week ago in DC about this, and they're talking with the NTIA right now about their role in that last piece, and so we know that it's going to be a hybrid solution, is what we call it, to solve for Benton County and everywhere else. There's going to be a lot of fiber, but at some point the fiber will be cut off because we don't have enough money to build fiber everywhere. And then we'll have an iterative solutions of licensed or unlicensed fixed wireless and low Earth orbit satellite service like Starlink for those who are in the hinterlands and would be really, really expensive to build to. We actually, like 2 years ago, we engineered, and I'm part of the broadband action team in Morrow County, and we engineered for the whole county fiber. We said, we hired a company, we had some money, and we hired a company to actually do the engineering and the cost estimate to build to every broadband serviceable location, which is they call them BSLs on the FCC map and on the state map, to every BSL in Morrow County. And there were some cabins, that were up a rock canyon, like 3 miles, and it would cost $500,000 to build fiber to them. And there's no way that would ever make sense. It would never, ever pay for itself to build fiber up that canyon. And so that's the kind of thing that the state is going to have to look at and say, no, we're cutting it off here, and that will allow us to stretch our dollars further.
Okay.
Thank you, Joe. I think just a quick time check. We allotted a half an hour for this agenda item, and I think,
Sorry.
so if let's continue on with your presentation. That would be great.
Okay, I'll go quick. All right, next slide. Thank you for that time check. All right, a couple other things. Once you get the infrastructure in place, then making sure that everyone has equal opportunity to make use of that is called equity. So, and Oregon has a digital equity plan, and there's grant dollars associated with actually implementing that plan. And so the first allocation of $9.9 million for digital equity has been allocated to the state. They're working on what they're going to do with all that right now with their plan. And then we expect there to be an additional 7 million made available over the next 2 years. It could be all 7 million next year. It could be 3.5 next year and 3.5 the following year. We don't know, but it's a total of another 7 million for digital equity. This is actually, for me, where the rubber meets the road. You know, getting the infrastructure out there is just step one. And I'll be brief, but I'm really passionate about this. Making sure that everybody has the skills and the opportunity to leverage the tool for more than entertainment. Okay, it's not, and I love Netflix. But it's not just about Netflix. Helping people understand that they can use it for telehealth and telemedicine so that they can reduce the cost of travel and age in place in their homes, e-commerce, starting a business or expanding their brick and mortar business online so that they have a much larger economic footprint. All of that happens, e-government, communicate. Well, what we're doing right now is fantastic. You know, I couldn't do that if I didn't have good internet at my home office right now. So digital equity is really important, and the state is working on that. So it's not just about infrastructure, it's about digital equity. Next slide, please. The Affordable Connectivity Plan, and I put this in here because you guys probably are aware of this, but you might not be. There was a federal program that subsidized $30 a month for broadband for low-income families, and that went away. Everybody agreed, bipartisan agreed it needed to stay, but for some reason, and I know you guys are shocked, Congress at the federal level couldn't figure out how to refund the Affordable Connectivity Plan. And so there were about 250,000 Oregon households that were taking advantage of this subsidy for broadband that lost that subsidy. Some of those, because that was the only way that they could afford a broadband connection, lost the ability to connect to the internet. So 250,000, that's a lot of households, not people. These are households in Oregon that were taking advantage of the Affordable Connectivity Plan. So State Representative Pam Marsh out of Southern Oregon, she's out of Ashland. She has convened a broadband affordability work group, and we're trying to solve that problem at the state level. So either a standalone program, or if the federal government does come up with a replacement for the ACP, that it would then layer on top of that. And so that work is in progress right now. If you're interested in more details about that, I'd be happy. I'm part of that work group. I'd be happy to share with you where we are on that. But in the spirit of staying on time, let's go to the next slide. This is a really cool thing. So Oregon Broadband Equity Coalition launched early this year, and it's a statewide group of people who are involved in equity or interested in equity, tribal nations, internet service providers, business, government, community members, all working together to try and educate and advocate for equity in the state. The link is right there, OregonBroadbandEquity.org. Anybody can join. It's an open forum, and we meet monthly. Rural Prosperity Partners is a proud founding member, along with Link Oregon and Oregon State University Extension Office. We started this because we felt like it was something that we needed to get going, so that when the infrastructure arrived, then we were already structured and built and focused on equity in the state. Next slide, please. All right, I promise what's next. This is the timeline, and this is mostly about BEAD. So I can't point, but if you look down at the next to the last bar across where it says challenge process and sub-grantee selection, we're about at we're in that gap between the challenge process and the sub-grantee selection. And so you can see that the sub-grantee selection, once the challenge process is over, then they do the pre-qualification, then they do the applications, which are sub-grantees. Those are applicants, okay? So the sub-grantee selection includes the pre-qualification and the applications for grant monies. So you can see that runs into, like Q4 into 2025 for the sub-grantee selection. And we expect that process to be round 2 and maybe round 3 to be wrapped up by June of next year. And because there's an official clock that started, that the NTI is holding the state accountable for, so we can't let things drag out. So you're going to see a lot of push through the holidays, which is always fun, for the sub-grantee selection or applications, which is probably easier, applications for BEAD. Any questions on what's next? And I think that the next slide is, what questions do you have? So I know we're out of time, but no, yep. Well, it's around. I'm sorry. I had all this dialogue for you guys. There are other grants that are coming due. So Reconnect out of the USDA. This is round 5 of Reconnect. We think that that's actually going to happen. We thought September, but it's now looking like Reconnect will be October and November before we get those. That's the only other big grant that is coming out besides BDP before the end of the year. So, and then a note on this one is our contract with the county sunsets at the end of this year. And we expect this work, as you can see, to continue at least for the next year, maybe 2, as all of this is working through. So we would love to stay engaged. There's still a lot of work to do, and hopefully you guys have found value in having us as part of the mix. So now, next slide, which is questions. All right. Anything?
All right, questions or comments for Joe?
Sure.
Commissioner Oger, why don't you go? Sorry.
I know, Joe, that you sent us an inquiry about the Broadband Action Team and the role it plays and whether or not we should continue the Broadband Action Team. And
Yes.
that is the contract that we have, correct, through the Council of Governments to support that entity.
Right. There are 4 counties. So we have a 4-county broadband action team, Lane, Lynn, Lincoln, and Benton counties.
Yeah.
And I should have said, you got alphabetically, I should have said Benton first, but actually, because I'm presenting to you, I should have said Benton first. But so 4-county broadband action team, and the total cost per year is $80,000 for us to facilitate and work on all of that. So your slice of that is a 20,000. What you guys have committed in the past is $20,000 a year for the broadband
Okay.
action. Yes.
And it's that monthly table at which you coordinate with the ISPs and with other local government folks, et cetera, to ensure that there's coverage wall to wall, so to speak, correct?
That is correct. Yep. Yeah, we meet monthly, and there are sidebar conversations that happen all the time. So it's not just, once a month meeting. There's a lot of work that goes on behind the scenes as well to make sure that we move the bar. And, I sent this out to members of the broadband action team. For the rest of you who didn't get the email, and it was, okay, should we continue? And so far, emphatically, everybody who has replied has said, yes, we should continue. There's too much going on for us not to, keep the bat going. And then I asked the second question is, what should we be focused on over the next year? And so far, I haven't gotten responses from everybody yet because it's not a deadline. I didn't give the deadline this early. I think the deadline's the 15th. But so far, everybody is saying we should be focused on infrastructure and equity. Those are the 2 things, so that, and, finishing up the infrastructure piece and moving into the equity world, and making sure that we collectively have a plan for digital equity for the 4-county region. So far, that's what the feedback has been.
Good. Okay. Thank you for that.
You're welcome.
Yeah, I guess my main question, and I think you've done a pretty good job of answering it, but just is Benton County doing all that we need to keep in the game?
I do think so. The broadband action teams have a pretty strong voice. So I talked about that piece of legislature that got fixed. A lot of that got fixed because of the broadband action teams around the state, the voice that we had. And my colleague, Rachel Maddock Hughes, actually was selected to represent all of the BATs and testify before the legislature several times. I testified before the legislature several times, and we got that piece of, not just us. I mean, there were other pieces. So we're not taking all the credit for that, but we were involved in getting that legislature fixed and that piece of legislature fixed. And that's what's allowing all of these dollars to start flowing appropriately now. And, and that came out of the BATs. So the broadband action team that you guys, and your broadband action team is one of the strongest in the states. I mean, it's 4 counties. The counties are all of them are engaged. I mean, really engaged in what's going on. So it's you guys have a powerful voice, and I do think it's worthwhile, and you guys have been doing a great job. So,
when I have to plug Joe and Rachel, without this partnership, you can see the insane amount of detail that we're having to track as BATs across the state and having to work with the Oregon Broadband Office. All of this is, 2 years ago, we had no idea how this is going to play out. And we're still, every week is something new, something's changing. So without this partnership, it would be impossible to be engaged. So that's my plug to continue our partnership for next year.
Well, I appreciate that. I'm glad you found value in our participation. We're passionate about Oregon, and we're passionate about rural Oregon. I mean, rural prosperity partners, and making sure that every Oregon household has the same opportunity. And so, we've been really pleased to be a part of this 4 county BAT. It's been fun. It really has been fun working with the 4 counties.
Well, Joe, when you were talking about the goal of connecting every household in Oregon in this system, I think sometime in the last year heard about some small community in Colorado getting hooked up to telephone. I think the reason they were in the news, this was kind of maybe the last one in that effort that started 80 years ago.
Wow, that's crazy.
We have our goals, and then, like you're talking about, the $1 million connection to a cabin, just reality rears its ugly head, and appreciate getting the information on, okay, if we can't string fiber, what are the options? And I'm glad we have a couple.
Yeah, there are good options, and the fixed wireless, that technology continues to really evolve at a rapid pace. And so, just 2 or 3 years ago, it'd been a real struggle to provide 100 by 20, which is the goal. You're going to at least 100 megabits per second download and 20 megabits upload with specific latency, so requirements. And so that's the delta between when you send and when you receive, the latency. And if anybody has ever, and some of you may be old enough where you actually talked on a telephone line before there was fiber going overseas, and where you would have to talk and then you'd wait, for them to get, because it would take so long for it to get to them, and then they would respond, and there was this delay. So that's the latency. And so there are latency requirements in this technology. The new technologies, fixed wireless technologies, both licensed and unlicensed, can address all of that. And so, there are really good options now for some of those outliers that, I've got friends on Starlink, and they love it, and they do, teleconferencing all day long from home and work from home in Starlink. So we do have several really good options for other than fiber. Now, fiber is best. I mean, everybody, if I could hook everybody up with fiber, I would, because it just, it's so fantastic. I spend another half an hour on why fiber is better than everybody else, but I would get in trouble with the boss sitting there in the middle. So.
Well, Joe, thank you so much. Is there any other comments or questions for Joe?
Yeah, you mentioned mapping earlier. What's the status of particularly Benton County as far as the mapping?
Well, and I don't have it up right now, but what I'll do is I'll screen capture the state bead map for Benton County and show you. I'll send it to you guys, and that way you can see, and I'll send you the link too, so you can look at it yourself. You can play around with the map. But you guys are not in bad shape. And a lot of that has to do with the ISPs who've been doing really good work there. But there are pockets still that need help and need attention. So I'll make sure that you guys get that here in the next 15 minutes. I'll get that to you. And
awesome. Thank you.
Will that work okay?
Yeah, look at that customer service. That's great. Awesome.
Okay, perfect.
Thank you very much. Well, Joe, we really appreciate you coming today and your time. And it's clear that you are very knowledgeable on this topic. And as Adam said, there are a million tiny little details. So thanks for being on top of all that. We appreciate it.
Well, glad to help. That's what we're here for. That's what we wake up for in the morning and think about going to sleep. So appreciate your time. It was really fun, and we'll have to do this more often.
Very good. Well, have a good afternoon.
You too. Thank you. Bye.
All right. Thank you, Adam. We appreciate your time too, of course.
Thanks, Adam.
Yeah. Let me know if you have any questions.
Yes. Right, so we will transition into item 3.6, proclamations and events review. And Rachel, I see your name listed there.
Rachel, yes, I was going to lead this discussion, but I also asked Maura to come in as well. As you know, Maura helps us frame our agenda weekly. And we also, it does affect her staff and staff time of where we are. So we wanted to kind of pull up this spreadsheet for folks to be able to look at for your review of, there has been generally an increase.
Sorry.
I like looking at spreadsheet, I could pull it up. So, we have added events over the years, and then we've also subtracted them in other years when they haven't been up. And we think that that's okay. But we kind of want to get an idea of the priorities and also the event and PIO budget, where we do add things like video production on occasion, a breakfast, special guests, and they're all terrific, and we really feel it builds community. But we would like, since we're in a goal sharing meeting, to kind of just open and have a discussion of if we want to really look at certain events and assure that we either do them annually as recognized from here. So I guess an example would be for Hispanic Heritage Month, we did a lot of things for Hispanic Heritage Month, which was interesting and fun and colorful. And then Black History Month, we read a proclamation. So not that one has more value or not, but we would like to get some direction from the board of things that that we can plan out on a more regular basis. Would that be correct? We also want to have an idea of just when there's budgetary considerations as well. This year we are much higher on what we've spent because we also had a retirement, and we wanted to recognize a public servant from Benton County, our DA, which drove up our costs this year. So we kind of want to look for some direction, right?
Yes, and just to kind of get a feeling from the board about where you find meaningful events, how you might want to celebrate those proclamations that are the ones that typically come from the board. And it'd be particularly valuable as we enter budget planning season so that we can plan for those events. And if the board wants to consider any kind of contingency funding, we do receive some requests that come up from the departments looking for events or recognitions of specific activities or commemorations. And often, oftentimes the department may not have the resources to support that type of event. So, that's enough, and that's, something else to think about. Would the board like to think about a contingency fund to, address some of those types of requests? So it's really asking, what things that you really would like to commemorate and in what ways, so that we can, plan for that and make those meaningful for the board and for the community.
Sounds good. Commissioner Oger, I see your hand.
Thank you. I, the events component of our proclamations really just began last year with new PIO staff and the intent to develop more video content and to have these celebrations be more meaningful than just a written proclamation that's read at the meeting. So I support that. But I do think we need to constrain it a bit. And as we move into the budget year next year, I will not be involved, but I would recommend that we limit it to something like maybe 3 or 4 sponsored events sponsored by the Board of Commissioners, and then otherwise it's on the departments to bring forth funding to support those event elements. But as to which ones, I think that we shouldn't do the same ones every year. I do think it's worthwhile to highlight different communities and different components of our communities, different needs and functions, rather than just focusing on the same thing year over year.
Yeah, I agree. So I think it'd be good if we set X amount of events a year. I'm not sure what that number is or needs to be, if it's 2 or if it's 3 or 4. I mean, quarterly seems like kind of a lot. And I think that if another department is requesting that we host an event for them, that they be responsible for the budget or at least share some of the budget. I would say they should probably just pay for all of it. I guess I'd be open to suggestions on that. And I guess I don't have a good feel for what we spend on those. So I would be okay with setting a budget limit, but I'm just not sure. I mean, I would need to know, what a reasonable budget would be for making that determination. And it doesn't have to be now. I'm just speaking in generalities.
Yeah, and
We ran some numbers.
part of it, I think part of that cost question would also be answered by what does the event look like? So we could probably, give you, prepare some sort of general cost about a small breakfast before a board meeting might look like this. A more involved luncheon with maybe, speakers on a topic, might cost this. An informal reception throughout the building. So based on the type of event, of course, we're gonna have different costs associated with that, but, we could probably put something together for you to look at, just as you could expect it's gonna cost this. If we're gonna produce a video.
Right, the videographer is another fee.
Videographer's
So
expense. If there's mementos associated with, for example, the website rollout recognition event, we had plaques made for some of the key contributors. So those types of things, depending on what the components are, the costs will vary, but we could probably put something together to have you take a look at.
Sure, because I wonder how, if I can see, it's a sort of a 2 birds with 1 stone, because the PIO can make the video and we can have it at the event, but then it can also go out on social media and, well, does that come out of the PIO's budget or do we split the cost or,
And that
nailing
is a
stuff down.
constant conversation that goes on in the BOC.
Okay.
Of who pays for what.
Sounds like we should just make the determination, so there's no
Sure.
more questions about it.
Sure. So, there's a couple of pockets of budget lines that we have that I think we could do a little more deep dive or create a new line of just events.
And I'm all for being flexible if we can,
Well, as a starting point, at least cost out what we've done in the past year. I know there were a couple breakfasts that I think worked really well. It seems like team building and find out, whether it's health department or public works, and who are they, and have an opportunity to chat over some breakfast and these couple of year kind of a deal. I think because they serve multiple functions, and I had the same comment as Commissioner Ogerow. I think it makes sense to do rotation and emphasize a few outfits or departments that we want to recognize, and not just, well, okay, we do this one every year. I know several years back, April, May, we had 6 proclamations, or, well, that's not. And I think we were reading all of them or most of them, and I think that was, well, this isn't working very well, because you don't spotlight anything. It's just, okay, it's April, we'll do, and I'm not quite sure how it ends up. Some months more than enough, and other months kind of light. And I think we've worked at evening that out and not doing everyone every year with some kind of recognition at the board meeting. But I think we should have some budget for this, just to say we think this is important, and we're taking time and some money. I think if it's a department, see if we can, make sense to split the costs. Say, well, we'll pay half if you'll take in half, because we think it, if you think it's important, then put some money towards it. But we ought to have a fund, and I agree it should be flexible, because we can't figure out in September what's important next April. We can say what we did last year, but things may change. And just like D.A. Harrelson's retirement, and I think we knew that was coming, but we didn't know all the details and maybe how involved it might be. And so very worthwhile honoring his service.
So I guess we're looking for some direction. We can come back to you with a proposal of an annual calendar. And then we can bring this back to goal setting next month, and we just give our recommendations of how we choose our own adventure. We understand flexibility. We could find out about 150th anniversary or something along those lines. And of course, we will accommodate through the chair, how we want to address that.
Okay, and I just emphasize, I like the idea of rotation, because give different groups the spotlight, and like I was saying, well, you can't spotlight 6 events in 1 month. It's got to be, we have to do a better job, and we made good progress in spreading things out and rotating year to year, and I would encourage that kind of approach.
Great. I think it'd be helpful to, I know in the material that you bring back, if you give us like a couple different options.
We'll do choose your own adventure type of looking at the year and where things land, and absolutely.
And have fun with it. But write that.
Well, there's always new recognitions that we're like, oh, I didn't know about that, or I didn't. And I think especially in the spring, there's a lot of they're all important, they're all important and we want to give them the recognition, but it's nice when we can highlight it a little bit more. And help with the board giving us that direction.
All right, are we good there? Do you need anything else from us?
I don't think so. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right, now for county updates. 4.1, County Administrator.
I'm gonna try to keep this under 15 minutes because I know this is getting real
I'm
long.
gonna set the timer right now.
You ready?
No.
Most importantly, my announcement is we do have a limited duration public information officer that will start on September 16th. Her name is Ann Thwartz. I did not say her last name correctly and I apologize. But Ann will be joining us. She is moving into Benton County and is originally was born here in Oregon and raised her family down in Arizona. And we're really excited for her to come on board. So you'll see her right outside of your office building and I encourage you all to stop by and say hello. Some recent county activities to note is we are pretty busy with the CFO search. So we have we engaged a recruitment firm and we will start that interview process, which will be a big chunk of time through the month of September that you will see Mr. Krager and me and some other team members to then be able to bring them here. And of course, each one of you would have some time to meet the finalists as well as we want them to meet the finance team. Because, our employees are, very important to us that they get a feel as well of who this individual will be. And it is a key hire for Benton County. So we hope to give you some good recommendations and that moves forward.
We got
Again,
a good one last time.
it was okay, but we'll take it. The continuation of I meet with senior staff on a regular basis. We had a BOC Corvallis leadership meeting. We are working on the Gallup poll that's in progress. So presently the employees it's an employee engagement piece of kind of looking at what change our employees would like to see, how they feel their work environment is. And we're looking forward to bringing that back to leadership with the findings, as well as looking at our core strengths as well and how we can all work together. This is the first time I've gone through the Gallup process. I'm really starting to really find it kind of fascinating. So I'm hoping that will be some work we will do in October.
My comment there is we got started on this before the pandemic and then so it kind of didn't have much activity. And
sure.
I guess I would hope for some more continuity because it seems like we go in spurts and then it kind of drops down and we're making a pretty good investment in this and I think more of a consistent effort I think would be helpful.
Yeah, I'm kind of really looking forward to seeing how this process works and if it's a real value added data info collection for us to make good decisions. So I'm hopeful it is. I had a one-on-one interview with Gallup. I thought it was really helpful for me as one of your leaders to help me guide decision-making and incorporating lots of folks and their ideas. So we'll see how it goes. So stay tuned.
We did the kickoff, so it must have been in fall 2019 and kind of leadership team.
Yeah.
Off-site children's farm home meeting room and had somebody from Gallup leading the discussion and it seemed like a great start and then COVID and trying to pick that back up.
Yeah.
So we made seems like significant investments in this process and in order to get the most out of it, we need to have a more consistent effort, assuming we find it worthwhile.
I think the timing is great. I'm coming up to my 1 year serving Benton County. And I think it's also really important that, you know, a lot of directors were fatigued after, during COVID. So this seems like a time to get re-energized and focused and, you know, bringing people together. And I think the word re-energize is really important, that our directors can have that moment of thought and to be thoughtful and really getting their vision and getting the tools they need to be successful. Moving on, just some community engagement I've been doing. I met with Gordon Zimmerman he's the CEO of Citizens Bank. I learned a lot about a lot of the work he does in the community. I went to a civic outreach business luncheon that was over at Garland Nursery. I brought a couple of my directors with me to interact with those folks. And I also met with the Albany City Manager on a one-on-one as well. We're really starting to talk about shared services opportunities that we'd like to try to begin those conversations. They're early, but I do think that Peter is very, very interested on opportunities there that then we could also look to more of our partners to look at it. So I attended the Rural Timber Tour with the two other commissioners that are in the room today. And I will hold off on what I learned from it so they can also, because they'll be reporting up on that. And we also had gotten an update from Samaritan, and again, it can go into the commissioners' comments as we move forward. I continue to meet monthly with Chris Workman from Philomath, and I have met with Ken Eklund. I will have met with him twice this week, and Nancy Whitcomb later this week, who are community members. We've been gone through a pretty difficult time with the landfill and Coffin Butte, and we are getting together and just talking about shared issues and where the county is. And then next week, I will be at ICMA, which is the International County Management Conference. It's in Pittsburgh. It's also part of my continuing education for professional organizational certification, which is something that you had requested from me to chip away at as we move forward. So I'm really looking forward to what I'm going to learn there and work with other county administrators across the country. And then I also have the Association of Oregon Counties District 5 meeting, which will be held here on September 13th. And this is the time that Benton County will be hosting. And that's my updates.
All right, moving into commissioner updates. Commissioners, who would like to go first?
I can go first if you like.
Go ahead.
I have met with a variety of constituents and other folks over the last couple of weeks. But the two that are standouts in my mind are both involve some level of reach back to those community members. And so I wanted to touch on those. One is the case of the resident in Kings Valley who is just across the border in Polk County, who has been using our Benton area transit service in order to get to doctor's appointments in Corvallis area, and needing to get into town a couple times a week. And it's we have through Corvallis, our provider, or our manager of the service, let the gentleman know that he's not going to be eligible for further service beyond October because of the cost of making these multiple round trips, cost and time as much as anything, taking a bus off the road. So Rick has been working diligently to find other options, and we did reach out, thank you, Rick, to Chariots up that serves both Polk and Marion counties to see whether or not they could cover the cost of service to this Benton County, DuPont County resident, but they have declined. And so the next step that was recommended by the Chariots manager was that we reach out to our Polk County colleagues, the Board of Commissioners there, to see whether or not they can help provide some funds. I did speak about this case to Jeremy Gordon, Commissioner Gordon from Polk County just last week because he's also been receiving correspondence from this constituent. So maybe there's an opportunity there. I do think that one of the things that would be very helpful is if we had a cost estimate for what it's costing us to provide transportation for this gentleman in and out of Corvallis for the needed services, so that we have some idea what we're asking for. But just wanted to make sure that all three of us were in the loop, because I know that we've all spoken to this constituent at some point or another, and that's the state of play. Rick can probably fill in any gaps.
Commissioner Oger, I think you summed it up great. Again, we've been trying to reach out, and prior to that, of course, we've been working with the COG, we've worked with Community Action, just trying to identify any type of support services that might work. I do think Commissioner Oger is correct. Probably our best bet is trying to work out a relationship with Polk County to where maybe they could cover some of the cost. And Commissioner Oger, I will follow up and make sure that we have a cost estimate so that we know exactly what our dollars would be on that. So
I think talking with Lisa Scherf, and I don't have my notes right here, but I think for the year that recovering a cost, her maybe rough estimate was 8 to 10,000. And then she added that wasn't the main problem. The main problem was basically to service him, took a driver in a vehicle a day. I mean, they were couldn't do anything else that day, and just the lack of drivers and vehicles. They made an exception. We made an exception for a year and made it very clear that this was limited duration, and that's I forget when in October that ends, but it does end next month.
I will work on though getting some kind of at least scope. I hear what you're saying in terms of the cost. I think there's a way to factor that component in. It's likely going to be a bigger number than that because of the fact that you're taking something off the road. My hope would be that we could partner with Polk County somehow to figure out how to either share that or be able to finding another efficient way of getting transport. So we'll keep working it.
And
I haven't given up.
Being familiar with the area, it's across the Benton County line into Polk County, but it's a little bit of a island. The Kings Valley Fire Department covers that area. They have a Philomath phone number. Maybe the sheriff patrols there occasionally. So it's just a little bit, maybe a little bit like North Albany, only with a dozen households. That's an island. But they do have a different address. Once you go across the county line, the road name changes and the numbers change, and because it is in Polk County.
And I can tell you that the Polk commissioners are also talking about their own service, and they're reliant on chariots right now. They'd like to be a little bit more flexible, but I think regardless of who provides service in that little island, it's an expensive area because of the fact that it's distant from all of our urban hubs. But I'm grateful for anything we can do to continue to explore how we might address the issue.
And because they're part of the Hoskins Kings Valley Fire Department at election time, they vote in Benton County, or James has to deal with those households. So it's just probably should have drawn the line, county line a little further north, but I appreciate the effort to try to solve this one person's problem. The good news is he's very pleasant, persistent, but pleasant. So that's helpful.
So thank you. That was just an update. And the other was that I received a letter from a gentleman from one of the contract, one of the unions that potentially would have been involved with courthouse construction. I think that letter was directed to all three of us. I did respond initially, but also sent the inquiry on to staff in order to provide a fuller answer. And Rick has and Gary have provided an explanation of the situation. And that draft letter is in your email, commissioners. And I would like to go ahead and send it out to the constituent if you are happy with that.
Yep, that sounds good. Thank you.
Okay. I think the only other thing that I've been doing is continuing to work with Community Services Consortium and the Council of Governments on the revised governance structure. And so I've had a couple of additional meetings on that topic. And that seems to be moving apace. There will be a memo that will come to the COG board and to the CSC board about the proposal. And then each board will have to act on it before we move forward with that restructure process for those two entities. And I don't think I have anything else at the moment. Thank you.
Okay. Well, let's see, right at the end of August, we got to, two of us got to go to the OSU first football game, President's House tailgate, and got to watch the game at the President's Box. And I think that's a real opportunity to make connections with the OSU administration and police chief, and in a informal setting. So I appreciate getting the invite, annual invite. And do I get to talk about the chili feed?
Sure.
I'm really happy with our sheriff that he sees part of his job is community engagement, and as part of that encourages his folks to probably use up most of a weekend getting ready for and doing chili feed. That's a fundraiser through For Spirits Foundation, and but just sheriff's office had 5 teams this year, and which is impressive, and shows our sheriff puts his time where his mouth is, and say community engagement is important. Walking around talking to Chris Workman, flown with city manager, met the new planner that's flown with us hired, and I think share him one day a week with Adair, and it's been year and a half, 2 years since Pat Deppa moved on and kind of left a hole in inspection efforts in some of our smaller communities. So again, just worthwhile showing up, and you never know who's going to be there and what kind of conversations. But perfect day. It wasn't that hot. It was mid-80s. It wasn't. You should have spent more time in the shade, or you got some of that hot chili, and
Yes.
that you made it seem hotter.
It was a hot day. I thought it was hot.
But well attended. I didn't hear, didn't stay till the bitter end to see attendance and what kind of estimate on money raised, but just from, it was full. I mean, and that event is, several years ago, it kind of wound down. I think sheriff's office and maybe changing personnel and when it was, and it used to be at the fairgrounds, and Philomath was excited to have this event there, and I think it's a good venue, having trees and some shade and plenty of parking, and it's a nice venue, and Philomath seems to do a good job hosting, so I would assume it'll be even better next year. Let's see, last week I went to Donna Schmidt's retirement party, longtime Benton Soil and Water Conservation District person, and well attended, and once again, pretty nice day. It was at block 15 south of town. So it's nice to get out in the community and make some new acquaintances, renew old ones. It's just good to be out and about. And I'll give my view of the timber tour last Friday. First stop was Holidays Seedling Nursery, and pretty impressive operation. And it was one I'm familiar with. A while back, I've bought seedlings there, and so it's nice to see there. Have made some improvements and some expansion, but doing a nice job. And then got really out in the woods and saw a timber operation and big equipment, and I think one of the takeaways was on that site, planning on cleaning up a lot of the fine fuels, which is expensive, but it's a long-term investment in minimizing wildfire risk, and also helps in the reforestation. But the main reason for spending the money and talking about broadcast burns versus piling up the material and burning that way, and Starkers, Starkers and Thompson both do that, and they're good stewards of their lands, and also talking about how active they are in firefighting in this area, and basically don't care where the fire is. they're available and have equipment, they will respond, especially when ODF is sending a lot of people and equipment to Southern Oregon, Eastern Oregon on some of these big fires and leaving home not as well equipped as could be. Do you want me to leave the hospital stop to you?
Yes, you can give all good news.
Go for it.
I have the map, which was drive by on 99W, and it looked like a, highway, freeway interchange. Couldn't quite figure out, well, it's probably some kind of road thing, because they're not gonna be, the other choice would be putting buildings there, and that didn't. So it was nice to find out a little more information on that $12 million project that's required by the city of Corvallis, because the hospital keeps adding capacity, and I assume this discussion's been going on for a better part of a decade, and finally the city says you must, before you can do some expansion projects, this interchange has to go in, or at least be in progress. I think they said a stoplight as part of that highway improvement, but and it was nice to get kind of the challenges of running a hospital and ready to discharge a patient. They don't need hospital level care, but they need some level of care. They're not ready to go home. And a lot of times there's no facility that will take them or has space. And so they're stuck in the hospital, which means they're losing money, because they make money on the emergency room and surgery, if I understood them correctly. And if they don't have beds for those patients, they can't do, well, either. And especially surgery, well, if you don't have room, I'm going to head to Eugene or Salem or somewhere else, because I need it soon. So it was an interesting stop on a timber tour. But Good Sam is important part of our community. It's nice to know they are having real financial challenges, because so much of their income comes from the feds, with very strict what you can do and how much you get paid, and the business model isn't working as well as it should, and they're never trying to make money, but the goal is not to lose money, and that's not, they're going through layoffs as we speak to right-size the budget. That would have been a good stop for you to be on, Rick. You would have.
I'm so sorry. The governor's office and the regional solutions meeting, I'm sorry, I got conflicted on that. So
next year, this is an annual kind of this time of year, and I think I put in a pitch for seeing if we can get smarter on mass timber, and maybe don't have a chance to go to the actual production facility, but we could at least tour PV Hall on campus and see what a mass timber building looks like. So as already mentioned, our AOC District 5 meeting here on Friday. And then the following week, AOC Board of Directors, Legislative Committee meetings Friday and Saturday. So AOC kind of takes it a little bit easy in the summer and then gets cranked back up in September and getting ready for the legislative session. And so we have that coming up.
So good.
Yep.
All right. So we got an email about the CFTLC special voluntary dues, saying that we did not pay them, and I believe that's because we voted not to pay them because they are special voluntary dues.
That's correct. And I actually sent a message back to Ivania Revuelta, letting her know.
Oh, good, perfect. All right. Cross that off the list. Okay. Because there is a CFTL membership meeting on Thursday that I was planning on attending. The first part of it does overlap with our leadership meeting, but I'm sure I can catch the rest, the other 2/3 of the meeting. Yep, we went on a timber tour. I really appreciate our partnerships and relationship building with farm and timber and ag and all that stuff that I'm less familiar with as someone that lives in a city. So it's helpful for me to get out and actually see, these sites, do site visits and hear from people that do it every day. And chili cook-off has been mentioned. And that was I think it was hot. Maybe I just wasn't dressed appropriately. I don't know.
There you go.
I was just
Two votes that it was hot.
I was dressed too modestly, I think. I should have worn a tank top maybe, but anyway, it was still a good experience. And so the sheriff's office had their own division, I guess, this year. And so the sheriffs and undersheriffs management booth actually won in their division. So that's exciting. Philomath, I guess, won the police department division, and then Corvallis Police Department won People's Choice. That's what I heard. So.
Everybody's a winner.
Law enforcement heavy.
Yeah. And let's see, I also attended the Blackberry Jam event at Heritage Hall in Monroe, which is also known as, they have the food pantry there in Kepinaknak Commons. That was a good event. I had a chance to tour that facility a couple weeks before that. They now have community events every Friday. And in addition to just every week they do things like Zumba and yoga and things like AA. I mean, there's so much that's out there for the community. And so now adding this extra Friday cultural piece, concerts, it's really exciting for the community of Monroe. So I was happy to attend that. I attended the wildfire hazard map meeting. And the little bit of feedback that I shared was, we appreciate all the hard work that's gone into it, of course, but maybe there's some places that we think maybe should be rated a higher rating, more hazardous. But they did say, yeah, it's just the way that it was calculated for all of Oregon. So even our most hazardous areas are still not nearly as hazardous as other places in Oregon, Eastern Oregon. And then much of the feedback from other counties and other county commissioners was, hey, you're rating our hazard too high. You should lower it. So I think I was the lone voice to say the opposite. Yes, OSU football game. I appreciate the invitations and I appreciate the relationship building with the president. And yes, the chief of police, Chief Anderson, I watched her give Dawson officer a challenge coin right in front of me. And I went, now you have to let me know how I can earn one of those. Cause clearly, that's something I got to do.
And OSU law enforcement had a booth at the chili cook-off.
Yes. And their chili was good. It was very good. Yeah. And the chili cook-off, I think you mentioned it is a fundraiser for the Four Spirits Veterans Fund, which Dawson officer owns, and he's also a Nadir Village city councilor. And then also a fundraiser for the Sheriff's Foundation, and then the Philomath Police Foundation.
I think they rotate who gets.
Okay. The pot,
Proceeds.
the pot of money.
That year.
Okay. Last week, or no, 2 weeks ago, I got to sit in on a community development staff meeting and just kind of hear the, a recap of their day-to-day and all the stuff they're focused on, and see familiar faces and see some new faces. So that was a good experience. We have the District 5 meeting on this Friday, the 13th. And I know our staff has been very diligently planning for that because we are hosting it. So I just wanted to thank our staff for the time put into that. And then a question to the other commissioners, are either one of you attending the AOC Board of Directors and Legislative Committee retreat?
I mentioned that, that's.
Oh, did you? Sorry.
A week from Friday. And
Yes,
Saturday.
okay.
Yes.
Okay.
I may attend just selected sessions. I know that some of it will be virtual as well. And it depends on how I'm feeling, of course, but I'm hopeful that by then I will be back to 100%.
Yeah, well, I wish you a speedy recovery.
Would you like to make a motion?
Speedy recovery.
I move to wish you a speedy recovery.
Why, thank you.
I don't know, I have a gavel. I don't know if that helps.
You're the only two voters.
Yeah. Well, sure, you know. Yeah. Something fun coming up for the community, the Albany Mushroom Festival. It's not technically in Benton County, but it is in Albany at Timberland Park. That's Sunday, September 22nd. And then something fun in Benton County is the Kings Valley History Day at Fort Hoskins, and that is coming up on October 5th. And that's an event that every year it sounds like they have such exciting stuff going on there, and I never have a chance to go. So this year it's on my calendar. I'm committed to going. Our Historic Resources Commission has been working diligently to get all the vendors set up and make it a good event for everybody.
Let me ride my bike there.
Well, if you do, I will see you there. Now, can you ride your bike up that hill, or do you have to walk
I
it?
can.
Wow, that's impressive.
Well,
Oh, is it?
I've got an electric bike.
Okay.
And,
But I bet you could still do it even if it wasn't, right?
no,
Oh, okay.
it's really.
It is. I was gonna say, in my car, I'm like, oh, it's pretty steep. Okay, well, I will leave it at that.
We have HR here who's going to give us some updates. We have to go into the executive session.
Okay, so let's see.
I've got one more thing and might turn it over to Rick, but I don't have much detail. Monday, the 23rd, Alsea. Things are going on in Alsea.
Courtney.
Oh, with Courtney Flat, is that,
Yeah.
there's so many different things going on with LC.
Oh, wait. No, wait, the
Is this-
23rd or the 13th? Maybe we're talking about two different events.
23rd.
23rd, okay. Maybe I
23rd
misheard
is
you.
September.
Yeah, it was Business Oregon and.
Oh, yeah, that is Courtney Fathers. So, yeah, so the governor's office, I think I may have told you this in a report at one point, that the governor's office has, as part of their efforts around housing, has contracted with a company that really works with a lot of small rural districts to help them with measuring their readiness for developing workforce affordable housing. And I say readiness very key because that's different than what their need is. It's not a needs analysis, it's a readiness to the ability to actually produce more housing. And so they had visited Alsea and have taken up a great deal of interest in not only the housing, but also the water sewer district, and also the potential expanding that district capacity to be able to meet some of the potential housing needs out there. So, so they contacted us, and I updated the governor's office on the work that I've been doing with the Planning Commission around workforce housing, but also, and we've also met with their team, Michael Mortar, who is the contractor for a lot of these small rural areas. And then we met with them. That was the reason I couldn't go to the EAR tour, is I met with Courtney Flathers, and actually it was a pretty well attended, about 5-6 other agencies that all have come together as part of the regional solutions team on just trying to understand water and sewer service districts. They didn't know exactly how they worked. And they also wanted to hear the work that we're doing with our ARPA dollars. So I would say they're really excited about maybe providing supports to the community. So both Nancy and I will be there on the 23rd for that.
EPA grant.
And the EPA grant, yeah. So we also, I mean, again, lots of things going on in Alsea, but we also are working very closely with Alsea and 2 other smaller communities on a grant, a $15 million grant through Environmental Protection Agency that would stand up resiliency hubs for emergency preparedness. So that's actually very exciting. They've got a volunteer project manager right now who's incredibly good, and he's just doing a really good job of organized. So I think we have a really good chance at this. We're just wanting to make sure we assess our capacity inside before we make too much commitments. But I think, we feel pretty good about where we're at. So yeah, sorry, probably more information you want.
Thank you.
Nope. That's right.
All right. Moving on from county updates. Okay, are there any announcements? Hearing none. Is there anything else for the good of the order? Hearing none, I will recess the meeting into executive session under ORS 192.6602D regarding labor negotiations. And we will take a couple-minute break to get all set up and ready to go.